All I ask is, if we have to give these bastards our lives, we give them hell before we do!
The tragedy of our day is the climate of fear in which we live.
Talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing.
I would ask the congressman to withdraw that comment and tell us that he really means that.
Half of Trump supporters do what I call activist support.
I don't know what I said. I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
The Bible commands that certain people be put to death.
Thieves or possesses weapons of mass destruction. 9/11 attacks were carried out by Al-Qaeda.
You can't handle the truth.
I remember that with that smoke. We are still here!
We have to say yes to socialism.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Do we have all of our candidates? Last call for candidates. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
All right.
I'd like to step into the race.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the presidential panel for the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. We have a fine panel of gentlemen here on stage that will be speaking to you soon and letting you guys know why they should speak for you in the presidential campaign. Thank you all for being here this morning. We're going to do things. It'll be a little bit different than some of your normal debates that you've seen. We'll have 10-minute speeches right out the gate for each candidate to give everything that they have in like their longest elevator pitch. This is like the stand-up comics full hour that you guys get to give, which is not normal for debates, I hear. So lay it all out there, and then we will take a 5-minute break after that. Then we'll go through the rules of the rest of the debate and have some fun. Do you guys have any preferences on who goes first? I know libertarians aren't great at organizing and order and stuff. We can just go down the list, starting with Lars Mapstead. Go ahead. Take it away. Yeah, you can take the podium.
Good morning, North Carolina. Thank you for having me here today. When I say the system is rigged, you all know that that's true. And I don't even have to tell you what it is because something pops into your mind of how the system is rigged. Maybe it's the criminal justice system, maybe it's the economy, maybe it's the healthcare system, maybe it's our education system, maybe it's our financial system. All of these systems are rigged. The bureaucratic system is rigged. Local systems are rigged. Federal systems are rigged. We have to do something to change the rigged system. And that's what my campaign is all about. And it's about delivering a message to regular Americans that they can understand that isn't libertarian deep thought. Because most regular Americans don't like libertarian deep thought. They just want to hear solutions that libertarians have for them. And that's what my campaign is all about. So there might be some literature in front of you that my team has put out. And we have 5 main pieces of policy broken up, and then 37 pieces of policy under that unrigs the 5 things that Americans care about most. And the number one thing that Americans care about most is the economy. And I tell my kids that people vote with their wallets. If they are struggling, then the economy is the number one thing. And so right now people are suffering under deep inflation. Right? Everybody is complaining that the prices have gone up, they can't afford food, they can't afford medication, they can't afford to put their kids through school. This is a problem for all Americans, and people are feeling like they're being left behind, and they are, because the federal government, the Federal Reserve, stole $34 trillion from the American people, and they robbed them of their standard of living. We have to rein in the Fed. You know, I voted for Ron Paul. I voted for Ross Perot because these guys were talking about the debt, the endless debt, and that someday the chickens were going to come home to roost and we were all going to pay the price. And I thought it was going to be a lot sooner than it is now, but it looks like we're getting to that cracking point because we're spending $1 trillion just servicing the interest on our debt. That's more than the entire military budget. This is unsustainable. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a collapse. And the collapse is going to be an economic collapse that we haven't seen since the Great Depression, and everybody is going to suffer under it. We still have a little bit of time, possibly, to rein this in, unrig the Fed, unrig the monetary system, and save ourselves the great pain that is coming. So part of the economic policy here is to cancel the bank's credit card. We've got to stop printing debt. We have to balance the budget. We have to rein this stuff in. The other thing is that people talk about how are you going to cut spending? How are you going to be able to get these things under control? Well, what I realize is it's not just about cutting spending or raising taxes. There's a third thing that no one ever talks about, and that is raising GDP. If we massively raise the GDP of America, the tax revenues will be a lot more without actually raising taxes, and we can start cutting taxes and cutting our spending. So I have a plan to start an energy race, which is going to vastly reduce the cost of energy across America. And by doing that, we're going to reignite our economy, and we're going to get all Americans on board this energy race to start nuclear power across the country. We're going to abolish the NRC, get them out of the way, and start really pumping our energy, because energy is not only economic policy, but it's a national security policy. If we are not energy independent, we have an energy policy, or we have a problem with our foreign affairs. And then, of course, I ran a large business. I had 600 employees, doing $350 million a year in sales, a company called Friend Finder Networks. Many of you might have heard of it. And when I sold that company, I got audited by the IRS. And I've also been audited by the California Franchise Tax Board numerous times. And after having that experience, I realized that no American should have to suffer under these tax regimes, that no one should live in fear of what their government might do to them if they fail to fill out a piece of paper. And every year that I'm filling out my taxes and getting all the forms together, I think, what a waste of productivity. Everyone in America is doing this. We're wasting 2 weeks of people's time. You could take that 2 weeks and go on vacation. You could take the money you're spending on complying with your tax code and use it to go on vacation or pay for your kids' school or any number of things. So we completely waste that. So one of my plans is to abolish the 16th Amendment. There is a bill that's before Congress. It's been there for 20 years called H.R. 25, and it is the fair tax, and it abolishes the 16th Amendment and replaces it with a consumption tax. Now look, my ideal is no taxes in America. But I'm also realistic, and this is the best thing that I think that gets us to abolishing the 16th Amendment and getting rid of the IRS so that we can then start whittling down taxes so that we get to that no taxation kind of thing. Another rigged system is our criminal justice system, right? And one of the main pieces of that, obviously, is to end the 50-year failed war on drugs, okay? I grew up in Big Sur with an outhouse and no electricity on a pot farm. Okay, and so I know full well what marijuana does and what it's all about and the whole drug culture. But when I was 17 years old, through a series of poor choices in my life, I ended up getting sober, and I've been sober for 37 years. And so I'm not advocating for ending the war on drugs because I want everybody to do drugs. I'm advocating for ending the war on drugs because it puts people that are have victimless crime in prison and makes criminals out of regular people that should not be criminals. And we have to end this. The war on drugs has created the cartels. We've handed a monopoly to these cartels, and that is driving a lot of the problems at our southern border because we've disrupted all the countries at our southern border by handing them these cartels who are criminal gangs that roam their countries. Obviously, ending qualified immunity. We need to police our police. We need to make sure that they can be held accountable when they're doing bad deeds. And another piece. So one thing I should say is that my team has put these 37 pieces of policy together, and we've spent probably the last 6 months putting these pieces of policy together. And Larry Sharp has been very much involved in that, as well as Tyler Harris and Dan Johnson and the whole slew of my team. But one of the things that we came up with was that if you are convicted of a crime and you are found not guilty of that crime, the government has to pay you triple the damages that they were going to go after you on that crime, so that we stop the government from attacking regular people. They have to know exactly that you're guilty before they come after you, instead of just using kind of the bully pulpit, right? So I think that's a really important piece, and I really like it. I also don't like plea bargaining. I think we should get rid of plea bargaining. Everybody should have the ability to have their case tried. And one of the things that we came up with was if you're offered a plea bargain, that's the new ceiling for what you can get as a punishment. And then you still can go and fight it. So I think that was a good piece that we came in. Another rigged system, our healthcare system, obviously. My insurance rates are going up and up, and the quality of my care just keeps going down. The government is completely in bed with the pharmaceutical companies, the insurance companies. Obamacare sold us out. I always say that if government breeds mediocrity, and the more government we have, the more mediocre we become. And it's like everything starts out good, but it just becomes a bureaucratic mess, and they care more about getting their money and paying for their pensions and that sort of thing than they do about taking care of us. So I want to replace our healthcare system with a more transparent system, one that makes sure that all the prices that you're going to pay are transparent and upfront to you. We have laws like this right now, but they're not being enforced, so we need to make sure that happens. We need to eliminate unnecessary regulations, and I'm proposing a healthcare savings account plan that allows you to take your money and spend it with the doctors you want, because what we need to do is create competition in our healthcare system. Right now there's no competition, so they have no incentive to do better for you, and that's where that mediocrity comes in. Another piece is unrig the government. Obviously we have this huge bureaucratic mess. One of the things that I like to talk about is there's a thing called the Plum Book, which is 7,000 positions that the president gets to appoint, and I would not appoint those 7,000 positions. I would let them just sit. And if Congress thinks that those positions are important, they can recreate them, right? But I don't think that the president should do that. In fact, I think the president has been given way too much power. Congress isn't doing their damn job. We need to make Congress do their job by giving the power back to Congress and holding them accountable for it. And finally, none of these other pieces are going to work at all if we can't get on the ballot. So the Voters' Bill of Rights is my signature piece of policy. It levels the playing field. It allows ballot access for all candidates. In Maine, I needed to get ballot access because I'm trying to win an electoral vote in Maine and put us on the map and do something crazy on election night that's never been done before. But I realized we didn't have ballot access in Maine, and so I ended up having to put $25,000 of my own dollars in order to get ballot access for Maine, and we were just able to barely squeak it by, and we got major party access for Maine, which I think was a big win for us. Everybody in America is pissed off. We had the BLM riots. We had the January 6th stuff. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. People are angry and pissed off. They feel disenfranchised. They feel frustrated at the system. And we need to bring a message to them that things can be fixed, right? What am I doing on time?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, pretty much about out.
Okay.
By the way, you will hear that bell when your time is up.
Awesome. I'll just finish up. Go to Lars24.com. Please be a delegate for me in Washington, D.C., and check me out at at Libertarian Lars on Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll try and give you like a 2 minutes.
Yep. We'll try and give you guys a heads up.
Sorry about that, Lars.
That's right.
Thank you, Lars.
You said 10, and
I was like 10 seconds. 10
seconds.
Yeah. I was trying to give you a 2-minute here.
Up next, we have Michael Rectenwald.
Hello, friends, and hello, North Carolina. How are you today? Good. Well, I'm Michael Rectenwald, and I'm running for president as a Libertarian. Several years ago, I was in a statist cult, really. Now, many of you may be aware of some of these statist cults. There's the neocon cult, there's the progressivism cult, there's the Marxist cult. They all are statist cults, and in that sense, they have something in common. And when I came out of that cult, which was, and I'm trying to give you like an experiential sense of what it was like to meet liberty and embrace it. It was like I had come out of Plato's cave, very dazzled. The light had been beaming in my eyes. I now saw that I had been looking at replicas of reality. And I now was able to see clearly. And it was disorienting, but in time I've got my sea legs, and I felt the liberation viscerally. Like I felt it unbelievably viscerally. I felt liberated, and this is the kind of experience that we need to give to other people. We need to be able to break them out of their various statist propagandized cults. And this is something that makes the task of the candidate broader than an electoral battle. This is a cultural battle. And I don't mean the standard fare culture wars. I'm talking about a culture war against statism. That's what we need. So I'm in this nomination process because I think that this party needs to be represented by the ideals of maximum liberty. Maximum liberty. Now, I think that maximum liberty would come without a state at all. And, but I know that goal is very far off. It's kind of like something we approach, but we must keep as a guide star to which we are orienting all of our behavior. And that doesn't leave anybody behind because we all want the same thing. We want liberty. I'm in this because I think I could represent that liberty to the maximum. Now, I don't think the state is the guarantor of much, if anything, except for being the worst infringer of rights that exists and the greatest source of violence on the planet. But I'm also here because I think I'm the candidate who best understands all of the threats to our liberty, all of the impending crises that the regime will bring down on us. For example, we know the standard fare, the war imperialism, the proxy wars, the Fed, the alphabet agencies, the regulatory regime, the security state, the military-industrial complex, but also the censorship industrial complex. The threat, really, of global governance and the threat of this climate catastrophism, which will be used to try to limit our freedoms of mobility, of even eating. The WHO pandemic treaty, the disease X, whatever this might be, they'll fill in the blank when they find a new crisis or origin, and so forth. So I've written about all these issues and in best-selling books. And so what I'm saying here is we need to look at this as a broader role than has been framed. This is broader than an electoral battle. So policies are very important, of course. You'll hear plenty of policy prescriptions, and I will say some of my own as well in what follows. But for too long, the Libertarian Party has ignored the fact that politics is downstream from culture. The winning candidate must not only know how to give us policy prescriptions which they would enact should they be elected. In that unlikely event, let's be honest. So what we need is somebody who is first at countering the narratives that are being used against us. For example, under COVID, we had all kinds of propaganda and narrative power being foisted on us, and it wasn't enough to sort of argue abstract libertarian principles. You needed to know what this propaganda was about and how to see through it. Now, if the candidate fell for some of the most recent, most egregious rights-infringing propaganda that came in the history of the modern world, like under COVID, I don't think that's a recommendation. I won't go so far to say it's a disqualification, but I don't think it recommends the candidate very well. So, look, we don't need a mere vote getter. Now, getting votes is good. We want to get votes, but we don't need a mere vote getter. If we wanted a mere vote getter, I think we'd nominate RFK Jr. Wouldn't that be a crime against the party? Wouldn't that be just the most antithetical thing that we could possibly do? But that means, we're not just out here to get votes. We're out here to spread the message of liberty, to broaden liberty in this country immediately. Okay? So that means that we need to be looking for somebody who will lead a 50-state, even international messaging campaign. And that campaign's message must be to get power to the people in the immediate. And I will talk about some of the ways that we could do that in a few moments. So it isn't enough to repeat cardboard cutout, patent cliche libertarian platitudes. We've had enough of that, and we need more. We need somebody to be original, to be bold, and fearless. That's what we need. Now, I will talk about some of the things, some of the major issues and where I stand on them. And I take the following prescriptions. The only wars that should be fought, period, are those in direct self-defense, and all other wars are violations of the non-aggression principle, of course. And I am neutral on all proxy wars between nations and other non-state agents or actors, as in the war in Israel on Gaza. Neutrality means opposition to all interventionism, of course. And that means opposition to sending arms and military aid to any country, whether it be Israel, Ukraine, or Taiwan. And Taiwan's not really a country, according to China. So the idea is, of course, that this is a terrible aggression. We're being robbed to kill other people in another country, in another place of the world. It is robbery, and then on top of robbing us, they commit murder. Let's be frank. So, of course, I would pull all the military troops out of all the bases, whether they be 800, 850, or 903. It's hard to count because some of them are secret. On the economy, of course, I would abolish the entire regulatory regime, and that is inclusive of the climate catastrophist regulation, carbon-cutting swindle that is coming down the pike. Yeah, and, here I would say, if RFK were on the stage, the difference between him and the way I see it is he approaches the regulatory capture issue from the wrong side. He thinks the issue is the corporations as such, whereas I'm saying it's actually the state, the receptacles for this collusion that's going on. So we need to abolish the whole regulatory regime. Let the market regulate itself, perhaps through privately owned competing overseer organizations. This would be better than a monopoly on that. And of course, I would abolish the alphabet agencies, CIA, NSA, ATF, TSA, Department of Education, Department of Homeland Security, and so forth and so on. Of course, we must end the Fed and audit it to find out just how much legerdemain was pulled, how much of a swindle it has been, how they have produced money out of thin air, then loaned it to the government at interest. It's incredible. The biggest scam on the planet. If there's any organized crime, it's happening at the Fed. That's an organized crime operation. We have to make that clear. They're counterfeiters. So that, of course, is an object. But in the meantime, we need to encourage the use of alternative currencies. And I'll talk more about other policies later. Go to wrecktheregime.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Chase Oliver.
Good morning, North Carolina Libertarians. It's good to see you again. I got a little deja vu actually being here in the room because this is the exact same place y'all had convention last year. But I am very excited to be here to talk about my campaign and what we can do to spread liberty across the country here in the United States. First off, let's set the stage here. We're here to support the principles of liberty. The idea that you are born free and that you have inherent rights that are given to you, and that the government should be limited to the maximum ability, and that if government is to exist at all, it should exist to secure the liberty of people. That's the thing that's the message that we get to go out there with. But people don't hear it enough. We don't sell it well enough. We need to have a campaign that can bring this message of liberty to each and every American in a way that resonates with them. And that's what I've spent the last year doing. Oh, actually, over a year now. Almost a year and a half I've been doing this. I've been speaking to people all over the country, not just libertarians here in the room, which we could talk, in the Fed, we could say all the red meat we want. I know how to gin up a libertarian crowd. But what we have to do is we have to get our principles into the minds and in the hearts of voters all over this country, because 63% of voters in this 2024 election have said they are open to voting for somebody who's not Donald Trump or Joe Biden. That is a golden opportunity for our movement, for our party, and for our principles to be put forward to as many people as possible and to bring new libertarians into the tent. It's like a revival tent. That's how I came into the party. I was brought into the tent, literally. At the Atlanta Pride Festival in 2010, the Libertarian Party of Georgia was there. And I saw the tent. I'm trying to read it. I was literally waved into the door by John Mons, our candidate for governor in 2010. And he asked me, what's the most important issue to you? And I'll tell you, before I even knew what a libertarian was, I was anti-war to the core. For the day the war on terror got started, I opposed it. And so I told him that. I said, I oppose the war on terror and the war in Iraq with every fiber of my being. And he said, welcome home. This is where you belong. I want to do that for millions of Americans who have that libertarian thing that just drives them to say, we want to have more freedom. And we want to connect that to the greater libertarian philosophy. So they realize they are libertarian and that liberty is the answer. And I've been doing that as I travel across the country. I've spoken to thousands of Democrats, Republicans, independents, and libertarians. Here's one of the ways that we get through them really easily. How many people in here are a parent? Raise your hand. I bet each and every parent in this room has unconditional love for their child. They would do anything for that child. They would die for that child if they had to. They're going to be that child's best advocate because they have a vested interest and unconditional love to see them succeed. So I ask parents all across the country, why do we take power out of your hands and put it into the power of a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. or your state house? They don't know your child. They don't know how special they are. They don't know the things they need to succeed and thrive in this world. You do. So let's take power out of their hands and put it in your hands to control your family with regards to education, medical decisions, or anything else. But even better, if you're an adult, you can govern yourself. You have self-governance. The freedom should be to you. That's a message that when we distill down to each and every voter can be attractive. And one of the things we have to overcome is the slander that because we support freedom and that we're libertarians, we don't care about other people, that we only care about ourselves. I'm ready to say, just because we don't want the government to do something doesn't mean we don't think it should be done. It just means it's done terribly by government. If we want to help the poor, there are better ways to do that than welfare programs that are basically middleman washing. You give the government $1 and they give you back a dime. We want to help immigrants in this country to be able to come here and work and not be stuck at the border under city programs and with the helps of churches. We want these people to be able to come here and work, start their American dream. Well, the way to do that is not more government regulation, more walls, more border patrol, more ICE. The way to do that is to simplify the system, to make it easy for people to just come here and work and be able to start their American dream like our past generations did, just like we did in Ellis Island, where 40% of Americans in this country can trace back their lineage. We need to return back to that kind of immigration. When it comes to criminal justice reform, let me just say this right now. I've been tear-gassed in the streets by the Georgia National Guard for protesting for justice reform. I'm ready to be a warrior for justice reform. We have to hold our justice system accountable at every level. Ending qualified immunity, holding liability insurance for police, ending mandatory minimums, ending the death penalty, and all the way through the way we treat our prisoners and the way we treat people upon release. And of course, we need to end the war on drugs. The war on drugs is a stain upon our nation. It has put so many innocent people in jail, many of them who are addicts who desperately need help. They need help to get out of the crippling grip of addiction. And you know where they don't get that? They don't get that by going to jail and being traumatized over and over again. Because when you're traumatized and you're released from jail, what's the first thing you do? You go right back to the drugs. So we need to have a much better way to treat people who have addiction in this country, those who are downtrodden, those who are ignored by those who are in power right now, those who are ignored by the Democrats and Republicans. Those are the people we need to reach out for and say, your liberty matters too. And that's the kind of candidate I want to be. I want this movement to bring millions of people into the tent. Like I said, it's like a religious revival. You open the tent wide, you let people come in, and you preach them the good news. That's the kind of candidate I want to be. I want to be an evangelical libertarian, preaching the good news to millions and millions of people all over the country. And I can't do that alone. And that's why I've built an awesome campaign. We have an amazing team of hundreds of volunteers, an amazing staff, and we are putting together a campaign that is running on full steam right now. I've traveled to 44 states across the country. I'll hit all 50 before our convention. No Libertarian candidate for president has ever visited all 50 states pre or post nomination. We're going to break that glass ceiling, just like I broke the glass ceiling of being the first candidate who's not a Democrat or Republican to speak on the Iowa soapbox stage, putting us on a level playing field with a two-party system. It requires hard work and determination to do that, and every avenue we can put ourselves on a level playing field, we're going to take advantage of that. And that's because of an amazing campaign staff. Just recently, we qualified for the free and equal debates that are going to be going on at the end of the month in New York City. Lars is also going to be on that stage, too. And it's because we worked really hard to get out the message. My team, on the last day of voting, we were in 8th place, and you had to be in the top 6 or 7 if you're RFK to get on that stage. And what it required was hard work. And my campaign sent out 40,000 text messages that day. We made phone calls, we sent out emails, and we got the results we needed to get on stage. That's the kind of hard work that a well-run machine can do for liberty. And so I'm going to be ready on day one, the day of the nomination. I'm ready to run full speed for this party, to bring new libertarians in. And I want to tell you, are you ready to win? Yes. Well, even if we don't win the White House, I want to tell you there's a lot of wins we can win across the country. We can win ballot access in states all over the country to make it easier for libertarian candidates to get on the ballot and preach that message of liberty in their own communities. We can win major party status like they did in Iowa, which is what allowed me to be able to get on that soapbox stage because they give more prominence, they give more attention to those major parties. We can win that victory. We can identify winnable, electable, libertarian races all over the country, and a good presidential campaign can get out there and support them and push them across the finish line to victory so we elect hundreds, if not thousands, of libertarians in 2024. And lastly, this is my promise I'll make to you. My job does not end on November if I'm our nominee, because I want to double our party's membership and hold it for 4 years. There's new bursts of membership every presidential election year, and then it falls off. My commitment to you is I'm going to make sure that each and every person gets reconnected to their local affiliate, that the state party has the information they need to reach out to those members so we can grow our party and create a foundation. So in 2028, the next Libertarian candidate for president has twice as many door knockers, twice as many activists, twice the donor network, and the wind in their sails to push ourselves forward. This is how our party grows, not just in this year, but for the next generation. That's the kind of generational change we need in this election. And frankly, generationally, I look quite different than what the Republicans and Democrats are going to be putting on stage. And we need that contrast. It's time for liberty. It's time for some wins. It's time for some victories. And I'm going to lead us to victory in November. Even if it's not the White House, we're going to have those victories. And we're going to build that foundation. I want each and every one of you to join my team. Go to votechaseoliver.com. You can join as a volunteer. You can add to the hundreds of volunteers we already have, help create this army of liberty. You can become a donor if you want to help support and put fuel in the tank for this engine of liberty that we're going to push across the country. We need your help. And I hope that if you come to Washington, D.C. as a delegate, I can earn your support, because it's time for us to put liberty forward in a way that's positive, in a way that grows the party, in a way that resonates outside of this room, but resonates all over the country. And I want to help each and every one of you achieve maximum liberty, and I want to help each and every one of us achieve maximum results in November 2024. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chase Oliver. And up next we have Mr. Mike Turbot.
Thanks very much. Can you all hear me back there okay? Kim, you can hear me okay? Good. I'm probably going to say a few things that piss you off, so sorry about that in advance. Look, this campaign is not going to be about small things. It is not a small thing that money has been taken from you and from your neighbors, and by the way, from people all over the United States, among whom are some of the least able to afford the oppressive system of taxation in this country. And that money is being sent today and tomorrow and next week to Ukraine. It is being sent today, tomorrow, and next week to the Middle East. It is being sent today and tomorrow and next week to Europe to protect nations that have no political will to protect themselves. I want that to sink in. It is not a small thing that your values are not taken into consideration in Washington. We have a foreign policy today coming out of Washington led by Republicans and Democrats who don't give a damn about your personal values. They don't care that the fact that 16% inflation over the past 3 years has made it very difficult for Americans to make ends meet. They don't care about that. That's why monetary policy in this country is not changing. This is why we need to make fundamental changes, not small changes. It is not a small thing that money has been taken from you and from other families around this country and was sent to a laboratory in China to create a virus about which not only our government but the Chinese government chose to lie to you. This is not a small thing. It is not a small thing that your government shut down your economy, lied to you about the reasons why, shut down your business, and then took your own money and sent it back to you in the form of checks to try to make it up to you. This is not a small matter. It is not a small matter that we have an entitlement regime in this country that has racked up $34 trillion in debt, that they expect your children and your grandchildren and my great-grandchildren to eventually pay for. This is not a small matter. It is not a small matter that the simple dignity of being able to raise your children the way that you see fit was taken from you a long time ago. It is not a simple matter. It is not a dignified matter, and it is not a small matter. The communities all over the United States are struggling under the world's most oppressive criminal justice system. It is not a small matter that the fact that intergenerational, persistent intergenerational poverty is a political construct. It is not something that would be expected in a regime of free markets. This is something created by bad public policy at a local level. The war on drugs, bad zoning, bad housing, bad school policy, bad police accountability. These are not small matters. The fact that your government operates in the shadows is because it is run by people whose values do not align with yours. They are hiding the ball purposefully. It is true that the Republican and the Democratic Party used to have politicians that would pursue political agenda that would align with their constituents. That is no longer the case. What's the number one objective of the Democratic Party? To keep Republicans out of power. Same thing with the Republican Party. And we know this is where authoritarianism comes from in a democracy. This is the reason why we not only have a huge opportunity in 2024, we have an obligation. If you're waiting for a Republican politician to lead the charge back towards some sense of a constitutional democracy, you're waiting for something that's not going to happen. If you're waiting for a Democratic politician to stand up for your rights, to stand up for your liberties, to stand up for the First Amendment, to stand up for the Second Amendment, I got that sentence out without laughing. If you're waiting for a Democrat to stand up for your Fourth or Fifth Amendment rights that I spend a lot of time talking about as a former police officer, if you're waiting for a Democratic politician who can spell the 10th Amendment, you're waiting for something that is simply not going to appear on the horizon. This is our obligation. This is our call of duty. It is up to us to get this campaign right. No one else is going to do it for you. No one else is going to do it for us. And remember, it's not about you, and it sure as hell is not about me. And as much as I love these guys, each and every one of them, it's not about them either. It's about people across this country whom we call brothers and sisters for no other damn good reason than the fact that they are fellow Americans, and they are struggling under an oppressive regime. We owe it to them. We are the philosophical descendants of the people that put the Constitution together, that wrote the Declaration of Independence, that created our federal government for only one legitimate purpose, and that is to protect our individual liberties. No one else is going to lead the charge back to a republic of delimited powers. No one else is going to take fiscal conservatism seriously. No one else is going to take social liberalism seriously. It is absolutely up to us. This is why we've put together the type of campaign that we have. We have 17 paid professionals on our team already. I'm not suggesting that we're quite ready for the general, but we're damn close and we're well ahead of schedule. It's the reason why we are running on a platform that I call a Gold New Deal, a new relationship between us and the government that we will tolerate. We need to break from the past. We need to run on a platform that clearly differentiates us from Republicans and Democrats. I believe this is something that we have not successfully done in past presidential campaigns. I believe it is the right thing to do, both in terms of correctly branding our party for the benefit of down-ballot candidates and for future presidential candidates, but it is also the right thing to do to get the type of attention that our ideas deserve. The second thing that we need to do differently from past presidential campaigns is to run a remarkably confident and a remarkably credible campaign. It's the reason why we have a big professional staff already. It's also the reason why, if all of you are noticing, we work very hard at preserving our credibility in all of our messaging on social media and the websites, in person, in public. We work very hard at leaning into my personal background of public policy and public service. I'm uniquely the one candidate here who has worked with the federal government. I was an economist with the White House for a couple of years. I'm also the only candidate in this race who has spent nearly a decade as a professional advocate in Washington for freer markets, for less regulation, for greater competition. I'm the only candidate in this race who spent nearly a decade in local service in a second career as a police officer. I was on the road for 11 and a half years in South Broward County, Florida. It's the reason I spend so much time talking about local policy and about holding police accountable and fundamentally changing the way that we manage police agencies and the way that we hold accountable police officers. These are not small matters. The idea that it should be difficult to hold a police officer accountable or a police agency accountable, that's not a math problem. That's not a technical problem. That's an ethical problem. That is not the way things should run in America. These are big issues. We need to take them on forcefully. If we're hemming and hawing around the edges, we will fail, both in a branding sense as well as a credibility sense. We can reach success by cleaving hard edges against Republican and Democratic politicians. If you could find something that a Republican or a Democrat would say, there's no reason for this campaign to say it also. We need to stop trying to find common ground with those politicians and find common ground with their voters. We need to run a completely principled campaign that allows people to find their inner libertarian streak and identify that they have common ground with us. That's what this campaign is all about. Look forward to talking to you some more. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mike. And lastly, we have Jacob Hornberger.
Ever since I discovered libertarianism in my late 20s, I have wanted to live the one life that God gave me as a free man. And that's why I'm in this race. I want to be free before I pass. And that is my big objection with the reform-oriented message that has come to define this party and our presidential campaigns for the last 20 years. It's not freedom. Freedom necessarily entails the dismantling of infringements on freedom, not their reform and continuation. All of my honorable opponents in this race favor the continuation of Social Security, which is the crown jewel of American socialism, the very antithesis of freedom for the next 25 years, minimum. That plan doesn't interest me. I want freedom now in my lifetime, not 25 years from now. They say that if we were to achieve freedom now, which is what I favor, through the dismantling of these socialist programs immediately, that there would be people dying in the streets, along with Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid. Pure nonsense. This country lived without socialism for more than 100 years, and there were not people dying in the streets as a result. But notice what this insidious philosophy of socialism does to people, including libertarians. It causes people to convince themselves that they are being good, caring, and compassionate through the continuation of a socialist program that is based on the initiation of force and the coercive apparatus of the Internal Revenue Service for 25 years. That's not charity. That's not goodness. Charity and goodness come from the willing heart of the individual. Children and grandchildren honoring mother and father on a voluntary basis, and grandparents. The churches of America are filled with faith-filled people that are always ready to help others in need. And it is incumbent on those of us in this party to lead this nation toward the restoration of faith and freedom. School vouchers. My opponents favor this socialist reform educational measure that was imported from the Republican Party, that is based on the initiation of force, which violates the pledge that we all take in this party, because it uses taxation to take money from one group of people to fund another group of people, just like Social Security and Medicare do. Or even worse, they want to use the presidential campaign to get libertarians to take over government school boards across America to show Americans that libertarians can run socialism better than Democrats and Republicans. My position, separate school and state. It is the only freedom position, and that is the position that we need to be taking to the American people if we're going to achieve a free society. And then there's the immigration control system along the border, which is based on the core socialist principle of central planning, which Ludwig von Mises pointed out brings planned chaos, which is what we've had on the border for 80 plus years. Along with perpetual crisis, death, suffering, rapes, kidnappings, highway checkpoints, warrantless searches, a Berlin Wall, and now a concertina wire to cut people up. Unfortunately, all of my opponents in this race favor this system and the continuation of government control over the peaceful movements of people. I have maintained for 30 years, including in my book, The Case for Free Trade and Open Immigration, that there is only one solution, and that is the solution this party has stood for more than 50 years, and rightly so, to this immigration morass, and that's freedom and free markets. The dismantling of this entire socialist system, open borders, the free movements of goods, services, and people across borders, just like we have here domestically. It is the only solution. My other objection to this reform-oriented message is that it can't garner votes. We all know this in this party. It's difficult for us to acknowledge it, but it's true. It's incapable of garnering votes. There's no constituency that loves this reform message. Oh, it's popular in the Republican Party. It's popular inside the party here. It's not popular out there in the general electorate, and that's a problem for a political party. That's why there's this temptation of looking for secondary goals like party membership and ballot access, because this message can't garner votes. Our presidential candidate 3 years ago gets barely 1%, 50 years after this party was founded. 3 years later, 2 Wall Street Journal polls, just recently, back to back, 1%. Things haven't changed over the last 3 years among the voters. What do voters have to tell us before we get it that this is not a good message for us? Can't garner votes. The latest poll by California State University, brand new, like a week ago, 0% for the LP presidential candidate. We're down to 0%. We have 2 campaigns right here by 2 of my honorable opponents that buttress this point. Chase ran one of the best campaigns ever in the history of this party for U.S. Senate. Okay? Incredible campaign. Through a fortuitous sequence of events, he got more publicity than any candidate in the history of this party. $40 million easy of free advertising that enabled him to get his message out. And then he got into a debate, televised statewide against an incumbent U.S. senator, enabling him to get his message out. Every voter in Georgia was watching these debates. Chase is one of the best proponents of this reform message I have ever seen in my 30 years in this party. It'd be very difficult to find anybody better. And if you watch that debate with Warnock, he made the passionate case, like he does today, excited case, dedicated case, for reforming Social Security, health care reform, educational reform, military reform, smaller government, smaller DEA, smaller ATF, smaller CIA. And at the end of the process, 2% of the vote. Mike Tremont ran one of the best campaigns in the 20th Congressional District of Florida. He got into the debates there, more than one debate, got his message out. At the end of the process, less than 1%. If these two guys, who are among the best proponents of this reform message, cannot do better than 2 or 1%, that's a message to us that the voters do not like this reform message. Now, for 20 years, we've been told that what I'm advocating, pure, genuine principles, a campaign of pure principle, is a liability. It's a negative. I'm saying that if we're going to break out to the 10 to 15% level, which I think is entirely possible, we need to move in a completely different direction, because 1% does not cut it for me. That's not going to bring me my freedom. A major breakout is what's going to bring me my freedom. And I'm talking about the kind of campaign that says open borders entirely, abolish every single socialist program immediately without hesitation, legalize all drugs, end the federal killing machines, invasions, occupations, sanctions, embargoes, state-sponsored assassinations, separate money in the state, education in the state, health care in the state. 20 years ago, I ran for U.S. Senate in Virginia with this package of principles and garnered 7% of the statewide vote. 106,000 people voted for this message. And I have no doubts that constituency is still out there, and that we could double that in a race that will vote for this package but will never vote for reform, as we have seen. And here's the kicker. We can start a wildfire of freedom on our issue, and that issue is immigration. That is the burning issue of our time. All along the border, there are pockets of people that are angry. The embers are burning. I know this. I lived half my life on the border. People hate the Border Patrol. And there's pockets of people that hate this concertina wire and the other deaths that have been going on there for decades, ever since I was a kid, growing up on a farm on the Rio Grande. What we do is we go into this campaign and we light those embers and we fan those flames and we start a wildfire of liberty that spreads then into the black community, which has been oppressed by this federal government with their racist war on drugs for decades, and they know it. Every black in this country knows it. And those of you who were with me at Wilmington 3 years ago know the response that we got among those poor blacks to our message of liberty. And then if that wildfire spreads to the 50% who don't vote, now we're talking about a major breakout in the polls of 10 to 15%, and now my freedom is in play. Because when you're at 10 to 15% with a wildfire of liberty spreading across this land, there's no telling where that's going to lead. I say this time around, let's do something different, completely different, something that the American voters are not expecting. Let's go into battle against these people who have destroyed our liberty with our principles. As libertarians, let's take the battle to them, and then let's just seize the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger, and thank you to all of our candidates. We are going to take a 5-minute break now. You guys can go smoke it up in the parking lot or whatever you do, and we will reconvene in 5.
We live in a new age, and it's time for us to upgrade. Our tinfoil hats. Operation Tinfoil is a freedom-focused small business and trusted sponsor of this show. Their super comfortable new line of beanies and baseball caps will not only crown your skull in style, but each of these dome defenders is lined with a silver mesh that blocks up to 99% of EMF radiation from cell phone towers, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and yes, even 5G. We don't know what EMF radiation does to the brain long term, but neither do they, so don't be their guinea pig and don't wait around to find out. Get your stylish tinfoil hat of the future today at gettinfoil.com. Use the promo code SYSTEM for $10 off your order. Again, that's gettinfoil.com. Use the promo code SYSTEM for $10 off your order. Have you or a loved one been injured by some fucknuggets, reckless driving, a tumble at your shitty job, or some other form of dumb shit outside of your control? Well, fear not, because today's episode is sponsored by a lawyer. Lone Star Injury Attorneys is an award-winning personal injury law firm that achieves maximum results for its injured clients. Max the Axe is not just a lawyer, but a hardcore Mises Caucus libertarian and also a big supporter of this show and all of our bullshit. Max is the best personal injury lawyer in Texas, but don't judge him by his occupation or location. Max is an avid defender of liberty liberty and justice in whatever state you got fucked in. If you've been injured and your ass needs saving, go with the pros at Lone Star Injury Attorneys. Visit LoneStarInjuryAttorneys.com or Google Max the Axe. Consultations are free and you don't pay a single dime unless you win. Once again, go to LoneStarInjuryAttorneys.com and get your ass covered.
We have 4 candidates. Can we get a 5th? Everybody give these guys another round of applause. They spent a whole hour giving you their thing, and now I'm going to just take a couple minutes to give you a little bit of mine. My name's Dan Smotz. I host the System is Down podcast, where we have uncomfortable conversations. We ask some of the, I'm told, the harder questions, but I just think they're honest questions. And I've got nothing against anybody up here. I want you guys all to do the very best that you can for liberty. So I'm here because they asked me to be here, because there's 50 states and 50 conventions, and they all kind of look and sound the same a lot of the time. And we can spend a lot of time following the rules and getting the same results, or sometimes we can break the rules a little bit as libertarians and get to know who the candidates are as humans, and that's really why I'm here. Sometimes rules be damned. I've only gotten to this point because I didn't follow any of the rules in the stuff that I do with the videos and the podcasts and stuff like that. So I just think it's important to get down to who you guys are as humans if you're going to be speaking for us, because this isn't about you guys, obviously. You all agree, right? This is about these guys and those guys on the internet. This is about them, as you guys are... You are begging them to allow you to speak for them. You are begging them to allow you to be their voice. So I think it's really important that we be honest with them. Now, every candidate was offered an interview yesterday, and you all got it, except for Mike, just because of time. But I gave everybody a fair shot, gave everybody the benefit of the doubt. I even offered to David Dunlap, who did not choose to be here tonight, offered him an interview. He did not. He graciously turned it down on the internet. But yeah, I'm here because they wanted this to be a little bit more fun than some of the others. So it's going to be. And I hope that you know that this is for, I've got nothing against you guys. This is all for the benefit of liberty and this movement. And I think that if we all, are human together, we can all benefit from it. I hope that some of the questions I ask are representative of these fine North Carolinians that you intend to represent and the entire country at large that you intend to lead. If we have time at the end, hopefully we can get some questions from them as well. Again, you're running to be their voice, and I don't think we should take that lightly. So, with all this talk about breaking rules out of the way, let's talk about the rules. We're going to be doing 90-second answers, so there'll be 3 different kinds of questions. It's not as complicated as it sounds, and if you have any questions about it, I'll just ask. But there's going to be 3 kinds of questions. There's going to be normal group questions that everybody will get 90 seconds to answer. If your name is mentioned, you can take your 30 seconds to rebut that. There will also be 1 direct question that is specifically for an individual here, and the others can, if they choose to weigh in on that as well, they can, but you don't have to, in which case you will have a 30-second rebuttal to the individual person's question or response. There will also be speed rounds, which will be hand raises and quick answers and things like that to make it keep things moving, keep people awake. It was a long first hour. Thank you guys for that. You guys all did great. This will be a good time. I'm just here for the honest debate and discussion and to find out who you guys are. Do you guys have any questions for me before we get going? No? Okay. Well, then we will begin with the first speed round right out the gate. Please raise your hand if you believe that you will be President of the United States in 2025. Good answer. I like honesty. Now, I do like that you guys all are honest about that, because I know that libertarians sometimes can LARP a little bit. I'm curious, if you agree that you will not be president, what is your purpose for being here? And we'll go ahead and start with Lars.
All right.
90 seconds.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so what I got here for was I was sitting in 2020, the COVID lockdowns were happening, the BLM riots were happening, and then January 6th was happening, and everybody in America was pissed off. And I was watching my friends suffer. My friends that had small businesses were being shut down. My friends were being shamed for wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, taking a vaccine, not taking a vaccine. Everybody was pissed off and angry. Our financial system was in complete chaos. The government printed $9 trillion to fix the problem. And I realized that things were spiraling out of control and that I couldn't sit idly by anymore. And I was watching the Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen campaign, and I thought to myself, I can get the message of liberty out to more people than these people can, because I have literally spent hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising campaigns in my career, and I know how to reach the most people with our message. And look, we have a messaging problem in the Libertarian Party, and it's not that we don't have a bold enough message, and it's not that we don't have a principled enough message. It's where we're literally not reaching people. And my campaign is already reaching people. I'm not waiting for the general election. Many of you seen my ads on Twitter and on Facebook. I'm reaching 500,000 people every day with the regular message of liberty, and I'm converting people. And it's working. The media is noticing. I have been in 9 national polls, the only candidate that's been in multiple polls in America right now, and the media is recognizing that, and that's what we need in order to get our message out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald.
Yes, I have made this very clear, that this campaign is not simply a campaign, and that it doesn't end with electoral politics at all. In fact, it doesn't begin with electoral politics. This has to be a massive messaging campaign, and that means in all 50 states and to international audiences as well. Why is that necessary? Because in order to get electoral results, we first have to make libertarians out of people. We first need to reach people with the message of liberty. It isn't enough just to get some sort of protest votes, that people will post at the last minute. You don't make libertarians between the election and campaigning and the election itself. You don't make libertarians at that point. This is not a sausage factory in which at the last minute you plop out the result. We need to be making libertarians way further upstream than that. And that means with a cultural campaign, a campaign that aims to change the culture of American society, to make people understand what liberty is in the first place. We want to retain people for the Libertarian Party by virtue of making real libertarians and not just protest voters at the last minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver.
So as I mentioned in my remarks earlier, there's a lot of wins we can have. And you're right. The chances of a libertarian winning the presidency in 2024 is a huge uphill climb. I don't think we live in that multiverse. Maybe we do. But what we can do right now is we can build the foundation for our party to grow into the next generation. And that's why I speak about things like ballot access and party status and doubling our membership and holding it for the next 4 years. That's one of the things I'm committed to doing, is building a foundation from which we can grow, from which we can elect libertarians all over the country, start building our bench, and start creating real political change in this country, and not LARP, as you said. We need to actually be serious about these things and serious about our goals. And that's why I've outlined these targets, these metrics of what I call a libertarian victory in 2024. How many states can we get that ballot access? How many major party ballot statuses can we get? How many electable libertarians? And can we double that membership and hold it for 4 years? And I'm committed to doing the things that need to be done to have that actually, break through. That's why we have such a strong campaign. But we all understand what burnout is. I mean, I think every campaign here can say, we have a staffer who works on 3 other campaigns. That's the reality of it. We need to grow our infrastructure. And to do that, we have to grow our foundation. And that's what this campaign is committed to doing, is building this party for the next generation so that we can survive, thrive, and grow into the next decade. And really, as Gen Z rises to be the largest population of voters, we can win their vote, and we can win their support, and we can start to win more and more elections. That's why I'm running for president.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Mr. Termont, go ahead.
Thanks very much. I think it's a big mistake for us to sit here and not raise our hand about being president in 2025. Chase is right. It's unlikely that we're in that multiverse, but the truth of the matter is that we have to be in it to be competitive. We have to in it to actually disrupt the duopoly. We cannot be in the business of announcing in advance, oh, poor us, we can't compete. That is bullshit of a high order. We have not competed successfully in the past because we've done a number of things wrong. The reason that I'm in this race, the reason that we're building the campaign that we are, is because I believe that we can credibly compete to actually disrupt the duopoly. Remember, we don't need to get 50% of the vote. We don't need to get 37% of the vote, which is what it would take to win in a three-way race. I don't know what the number is, right? We know that it's north of 3%. We know that Gary Johnson got double digits in polling before he imploded. We can run a credible campaign. It's the reason why we lean so hard in my own background of public policy and public service. It's the reason why we maintain such credibility in our messaging. It's the reason that we run on what we call a Gold New Deal, a commitment to a platform that's very principles forward, that'll completely differentiate us from Republicans and Democrats. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Mr. Hornberger.
I totally question this notion that the problem is that we haven't gotten our message out. We've gotten the same message out for 20 years. People know what our message is. And what we have a difficult time confronting in this party is that the problem is with the message itself. Look, we run campaigns calling for the continuation of socialism while we pride ourselves on being anti-socialist. Border socialism, Social Security socialism. Everybody knows this is our message. And then a sales tax? I mean, if I win this party's nomination, I'm going after the lower economic classes. Those are the people being squeezed by inflation and by the state. And we're going to advocate a national sales tax of 18%? My gosh, you can kiss those votes of everybody in the lower half goodbye because they will never vote for any of this party because we will be known as the party of the millionaires. Now, I have no doubts that this position can garner votes from millionaires, but you're not going to garner the votes of the lower classes that are going to now be called upon to bear the burden. We need to set the standard of what freedom is. When people hear these messages, then they start digesting them. They start considering them. If they never hear what it means to call for open borders or abolishing Social Security and Medicare, how do they ever start considering what freedom is? We're like Johnny Appleseed. We're over there planting the seeds in order to reach that critical mass that will bring me a free society and bring you a free society.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. All right. Feel free to applaud, you guys. If this is really quiet room. Good job. All right, moving on. We will transition to something that libertarians don't touch on a lot, the topic of religion, because we've got a lot of atheists, a lot of big-brained people in our party or something, but religion, for better or worse, plays a large role in electable politics these days. I'm just curious, literally, who do you think God is? And let's start at the other end this time with Mr. Hornberger. 90 seconds.
Well, I'm a devout Catholic. My service to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is everything. This is my entire life. And I don't live up to as high a standard as I should at times, but this is my life. The service to God is everything. It guides my entire life. And I don't need 90 more seconds.
All right. Thank you. Anybody want to rebut that? Just kidding. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Hornberger.
I appreciate that. Having been raised Calvinist and Lutheran, I'm not going to be able to hide the ball on how I feel about an array of social issues. But I do think it's incredibly important that we separate our conversations about public policy from our conversations about religion. It's okay for you all to know where I'm coming from, and I appreciate where Jacob is coming from. The answer to your question is he who is, right? He is our North Star. It is for him that we dedicate our lives. It is for him that we engage in these conversations. But how we feel about public policy and how we feel about religion have got to be separated in our public discourse. I think that's very important. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So I'm an Episcopal Christian, and it has informed my faith. Here, I'll use this one. Sorry. I'm an Episcopal Christian. My faith informs nearly everything that I do. God to me is a God of empathy, a God of love, And when I try to look at my worldview, I try to look at my worldview through one of empathy and love for my fellow man, because that's what my faith has taught me to do throughout my life. Now, as Mike said, you can see where I'm coming from, but I'm not going to try to push my way of life on anybody. I think the ideas of liberty are you can have your own idea of faith. You can believe what you want to believe, and so long as you do that in peace, you are my fellow man. You're my brother and sister in life, and I'm not going to stop you from believing what you want to believe. But I do believe that my values are definitely informed by my, I was raised evangelical, but now I'm a member of the Episcopal Church, and it's something that I hold dear, and I love to get out to church on Sundays when I'm not doing libertarian debates, and those are few and far between these days, but anytime I can get out there, I am in church every Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald.
Yeah, so, I'm an evangelical Christian, and, I was raised Catholic. I went to a Catholic seminary in 9th grade, so I'm talking at 14, living adjacent to a monastery. This is why I became such a bookworm. There was nothing else to do. But that being said, I believe the Libertarian Party must be agnostic in itself with reference to this question. That doesn't mean individuals cannot hold their own beliefs, whether atheist, theist, or non-theist, Buddhist, whatever, but the party itself remains agnostic. That being said as well, I still think the party needs to have something like a religious-type fervor in the spreading of the message of liberty, that it has to be a charismatic movement. And that's not to say that it has the content of Christianity or anything like that. I'm talking about the characteristics that come with people really believing and spreading the message as widely as possible, and an evangelical-type method. So I think religion is something that's totally personal. I don't think the party should take a stand on it, but I think we should aim to take our lessons from, movements that have spread, and we can do that with the message of liberty. It has to be something people feel viscerally. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mapstead.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was baptized Christian, but I don't practice Christianity. The thing that I want to talk about, though, is that a lot of people, there's many different religions, and different religions sometimes are opposed to each other. And a lot of times, what ends up happening is people use the government to force their opinion and their will on other people at gunpoint. And this is something that I feel is causing a lot of division in America, that we should allow other people to believe in what they want to believe in, to behave the way that they want to behave as long as they're not harming other people. And we shouldn't be judging other people and shaming them for not believing the same things that we believe in, that we should allow people the freedom to embrace whatever religion that they choose. And I also agree that the government should not be involved in religion, that it's a personal matter, and that we should keep religion and state separate. I think that was a good cause. But I think that right now we have a culture on the left that has turned into a sort of a religion. And that same type of activity is being forced upon people at gunpoint. And I think you're having a lot of animosity in America due to that. And I think we just got to stop on both sides of forcing our opinions and our morals onto each other and let each person live their freest life without coercion from the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. Speaking of Lars, let's stay on Lars. Lars, you're rich, like real rich. Comes from a lot of areas, a lot of porn areas. I'm curious, with your background with Penthouse, with Adult Friend Finder, and that type of thing, do you have any regrets as far as what that did in creating the OnlyFans culture that we have currently? And do you think any of that image could taint? Once the press starts looking into like your background,
yep.
I'm not judging you personally. I'm saying, like, will that cause any hurdles in your campaign?
Yeah. So what he's talking about is I ran a company called Friend Finder Networks, which had maybe 25 different types of dating sites in it. And one of those sites was Adult Friend Finder. And that kind of came about because my partner was looking for a date. And I told him he was a nerd. He was finding a date on the internet. That's totally nerdy. And then he came to me and he said, hey, there's all these people that are like looking for sex and talking about sex, and I'm banning them all off of this site. I don't want them there because I want to, have it just be for dating. And I said, well, why don't you make an adult site where people that want that type of activity can go and behave the way that they want to behave and interact the way that they want to interact without the shame and that sort of thing. And so that's how that kind of got created. The Penthouse thing, essentially we sold the company in 2007 for $500 million, and we sold it to Penthouse Networks. So while I didn't really own Penthouse, it was, part of the thing after we sold. But that was literally 20 years ago. I have built several other companies since then. I built a company around cars and auto racing, which I built to 25 million fans on Facebook. I am an expert marketer. I'm an expert at getting the message out and getting eyeballs out. And I believe that that's going to be the most important thing in this election, is getting our message out. And I stand on my background as a great marketer in order to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. And if anybody wants a 30-second rebuttal to that, if you think that that would be any concern of Lars' background, feel free to raise your hand. No? Good deal. All right, moving on. Let's talk about, RFK has been brought up quite a bit for somebody who's not in our party. Whoever gets the nominee, this question's asked a lot in libertarian debates, whoever gets the nominee, would you support them? That is question number one, but question number two is, even if it was RFK, however you see that, is it your job at that point to support him as a libertarian candidate? And
we're going to send a bold and principled message of hell no.
Are we taking a vote on that? Yeah, let's go and start with Rick.
Yeah, I will be debating RFK Jr. next Saturday. And they're calling it a roundtable because he refuses to call it a debate. And I'm going to challenge him directly in ways that he may not be ready for. He's a statist of the first order. Okay, he thinks the state is the solution to all our problems, whereas you and I both know it's the problem itself. And I will also challenge him on his outrageous statements made with reference to the Israeli campaign on Gaza, which I think is a travesty, beyond unbelievable that he would support the funding and arming of Israel to commit what I consider to be an onslaught against this people. Wherever you stand on the whole history of the Middle East, which I will not attempt to adjudicate, it is one thing to support a country, but it is another thing to fund and arm them to slaughter people. So I will support the nominee, but if it was RFK Jr., I would absolutely not support that nominee. I think he's a travesty and totally anathema to the libertarian core principles of property, of the non-aggression principle, and the sense that the state is actually the problem, not the solution. He wants to add all these layers of bureaucracy on top of the existing layers in order to regulate rightly, do the right tinkering with regulation so the people are involved. Nonsense. He's totally out of bounds. So,
thank you, Mr. Rectenwald. Go ahead, Chase.
So I intend on voting for a Libertarian for president in 2024. If we as a party nominate RFK, we won't have a Libertarian on the ballot for me to vote for. So I will not be supporting RFK if he is our nominee. I will actively run opposing him. And here's the truth. Because he's not a Libertarian. And his solutions are not Libertarian. And to be frank, I'm not going to be on a debate stage with him next week, but he's invited to the debate stage at the Free and Equal Debates if he actually wants to show up and debate on a level playing field on a debate stage, not on a stage where it's called a town hall for his convenience, where there's metal detectors outside the door because he's too scared to let us exercise our Second Amendment. That's not the kind of campaign I want to run, and it's certainly not the kind of campaign that I think libertarians across the country want to run. Let me just be frank with you if you're a voter out there. I don't care if you're a libertarian or not and you're listening to this. If you want to support a political outsider, somebody who's outside of the establishment of political politics, or of the political elite, don't vote for a guy with the last name of Kennedy. That's probably a bad indicator that you're supporting somebody outside the establishment. And so if you want to support someone outside the establishment, support a real libertarian nominee, a real libertarian who's going to get out there and push a message of freedom, a message that you own your own life, that if it's your body is your body, your life is your life, your property is your property, and your business is your business, and if you're doing it peace, the government should stay the hell out of it. That's the message we can put forward if we have a libertarian nominee, but not if RFK comes in and buys our nomination. If we do that, we're no better than political whores, and I refuse to let our party be bought and paid for by RFK Jr. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Mr. Maat.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I don't think RFK has any more chance of gaining the nomination of this party than one of us does of becoming president of the United States. I think those are approximately equal. I really don't see that happening. I happen to have a little bit of insight in this. I don't think that he is going to be seeking our nomination. I think that he has been sufficiently discouraged because although he is a Democrat, he is not an absolute moron. I think he knows that it would not succeed. By the way, if he did come into our party and ask for the nomination, and if by some alignment of strange stars he were to earn that nomination, I would run as an independent. And I think I would have a better chance of gaining a lot of votes as an independent than he would as a libertarian, because he'd be full of crap. He'd be saying things that are not libertarian. He is a statist. Michael pointed that out, and it's quite correct. But I do believe that people are ready for a clear, clean, crisp libertarian message. And we can deliver that whether we're inside the Libertarian Party or whether we're outside the Libertarian Party. That's what matters. The campaign that I'm putting together is already built professionally with a lot of credibility, and I think that we could run it as an independent if we had to. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Mr. Hornberger.
Yeah. Let me just simply say I incorporate everything by reference that everybody said on this stage. This would be an absolute disaster. I think it would spell the demise of the Libertarian Party. We are not a rent-a-party. I mean, the only reason he would be seeking our nomination is because we got ballot access, not because he believes in our principles. He would be renting our party, and we would be the laughing stock of the American people. Because we'd be, let's say he got 20%. We'd be there saying, hey, we got 20% in the presidential race. We got ballot access, and we got membership. Who cares? This guy is your welfare warfare statist in its purest form. The Second Amendment, gun rights, are the linchpin of a free society. You can't have a free society with the right to without the right to keep and bear arms. And this guy is the gun grabber of all gun grabbers. He tried to make it look at Freedom Fest when he was speaking like he was orienting toward libertarianism, that he sympathizes with gun rights. And then he turns around and says he'll sign the first assault weapons ban that Congress presents to him. This would be an absolute disaster. This is a guy that has praised communist Cuba for its health care policies, which pretty much mimic our own with Medicare and Medicaid. And he's also praised communist China for its public works foreign policy. And we're going to be running this guy as our nominee? I don't think so. To echo these guys, there is no possibility I would ever endorse this guy as a nominee of this party.
Thank you. Mr. Mapstead, did you have a sufficient answer earlier, or would you like to take the rest of it?
Yeah, I'm going to double dip a little bit. Yeah, that was the easy answer. Look, I didn't spend $25,000 of my own money to get major party status in Maine to hand it over to RFK, right? I got major party status in Maine because I want to win an electoral vote on election night and put us on the map. I want to send the middle finger to the duopoly this election season, and we can do that by winning this electoral vote. Imagine going across the map and California is blue and Texas is red and Florida is red and New York is blue. And what the hell is this gold crap doing on the map? And by focusing on Maine or Nebraska, which are the two easy states to win, we only have to get 240,000 votes. We can light a fire and we can get media excited and we can get $30 to $40 to $50 million worth of free advertising by focusing small first and growing nationally. And this is going to give cover to all the candidates. There's 50 people running in North Carolina. That is amazing. You guys are awesome. And I want to give you guys the ability to say we can win by winning an electoral vote on election night. And that will give cover for the next 4 years, even after my campaign is over. That's when I want to leave for the Libertarian Party. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's get spicier. So let's go with Chase. Chase, you've spoken on the topic of transitioning children, and you have said that it's between the child and the parents and the doctor. I'm curious, for you personally, if you had a child, would that be up for debate? Would you how would that look for you as a father?
Yeah, so I've actually talked to parents of trans kids and trans people all over the country with regards to this issue. And really, it's one about medical autonomy. If I had a child, I would want to make sure that I could go to the doctor that I want to choose and the mental health professionals that I want to choose, and not have the government regulate how I treat gender dysphoria in my child. Now, if you look at the number of people out there, there's 75 million young people. 300,000 have displayed some sort of gender dysphoria under the age of 18. Of that 300,000, only 4,000 have gotten any kind of medical intervention. That tells me that 296,000 are doing social transitioning, allowing their kid to wear different clothes, have a different name, cut their hair the way they want to, and have their ability to express themselves as they want to. And free expression is a part of liberty. And so if I were a parent and I had a child who's suffering from gender dysphoria, I would want to make sure that it's me, our doctor, and our mental health professionals that are making the decisions, and not the state government or the federal government. And I think that's perfectly in line with the libertarian position, however you feel about the position. And I do think that this is something that parents can make that determination. Doctors can. But to have a bureaucrat on some board and some sitting in some department of whatever, that's not liberty. And so I would support the idea of me as a parent and as parents out there being able to make determinations for their own kids. And I think that's really in line with the libertarian policy there. And I do believe that, for most kids, that just means changing their hair, changing the clothes they wear, or maybe the name they call themselves. And that's just fine by me.
Is there any, just a little bit of pushback there, is there any age level that surgical transition you would think would be considered?
I believe surgery should be for adults. I do. I've always had that position. Because surgery is irreversible, it's unchangeable. And I believe that should be held to the realm of those who are adults. But I also believe there are younger trans people who deserve the right to be able to socially transition or use other therapies that can help them in their transition. And then once they become an adult, if they choose for themselves to have surgery, they're an adult making a choice for themselves. It's their body, not mine, and certainly not the government's.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rectenwald, would you like a 30-second rebuttal? Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, I don't think a child under the age of 18 has the capacity to give consent. Likewise, I think transitioning with either medical intervention or pharmacological interventions is a violation of that child's of the non-aggression principle. And I don't think you can become the opposite sex. It's just not biologically possible. But that said, people can express themselves in any ways they wish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rectenwald. Anybody else want to weigh in on that topic? No? Just not going to touch it? Yeah. You're scared. It's fine.
Everyone agrees.
Yeah. I doubt that. Libertarians, come on. So when I first got into libertarianism, I remember watching a debate, and there was this ridiculous question that has kind of become infamous since then about seatbelt laws or like driver's licenses or toasting your own damn toaster, Daryl W. Perry. Batshit crazy stuff that made me go, hey, let's see what these guys are all about, and I loved it. I want to ask that question. Do you guys believe that there should not be seatbelt laws, and does that also extend to children? Go ahead, Mr. Mapstead. 90 seconds.
Thank you. I think that, government often has the best interest at heart for everybody when they're making laws, but it always gets blown out of proportion. It always gets ridiculous. It's funny that the police will write you tickets for a seatbelt law, but they won't be wearing a seatbelt. The police will write you a ticket for being on your cell phone, and they're on their computer. We have hypocrisy in America today. The entire legal system is rigged. We have a two-tier criminal justice system where the law is applied unevenly and unfairly based on how much money you have and what people you know. And so my whole criminal justice reform policy piece is to level the playing field and make things fair and equal for people so there isn't this multi-tier of justice. And so that is kind of, it doesn't exactly talk to your point about seatbelts, but that all laws are fungible and all laws are applied unfairly, and I'd like to see us change that before deciding on whether or not we need to have these laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the government always has our best interests at heart. Let's be real. The state is, as I've said, a parasite. And so it is not, what it does is it uses issues and concerns that people have in order to impose its own control over us. So it takes any kind of situation and it says, look, we need to protect people from themselves. And then they use that as leverage to get control over people. This is how they operate. That's how the state functions. It is about increasing its power over people. And it uses whatever alibis it can possibly get to do so. So I believe in rolling back the state entirely and not to have anything like a state, nothing like a state. Self-governance is what we need to aim for, self-governance. The government's over ourselves, over our own bodies, over our own intake of whatever we want to intake. And that's what this party must stand for. And that's what I mean by standing for the maximum ideal of liberty. Thank you.
Now, there was a second part to this. Thank you, Mr. Rectenwald. Lars, I don't know if you touched on it either, but kids, as far as parents, should they be, is it child neglect to not buckle up your toddler? And if you want to go back to that, we can circle back, but yeah, just 30 seconds.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I have 2 children, and I think it's more about education than it is about forcing laws upon people. That obviously, if I'm educated enough to know that wearing a seatbelt is going to save my child in a car accident, then as a parent, I'm probably going to do that. I don't really need the government to tell me that I must do this certain thing or it must conform this certain way or I have to have this certain size seatbelt or my 8-year-old has to sit in a child safety thing. If my kid is, 400 pounds and 6 feet tall, do they really have to do it even though they're 8 years old? I mean, the government just puts these blanket things on people and then just forces their will on us. And we got to end government coercion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald, 30 seconds.
Yes, I believe parents are the people who should determine whether a child is in a seatbelt or not. Here's a funny story. One time when I lived in outside of D.C. in Bethesda, and I was working for a company called Metro Traffic Control. They were traffic reporting network. And I was driving on a Sunday, and I got pulled over because my kid was running around outside on the back seat. And the cop pulls me over, and here I am driving on a suspended license, okay? So I had to actually, say, no, officer, look, he'll get him right back in the seat. You know how we've all done. They have no business intervening in these things. Thank you.
All right, Chase, go ahead.
So this is an example of when I said, I don't think the government has to do something for it to be a good idea. The government doesn't have to mandate those good ideas. We all choose to wear seatbelts or don't. If you don't want to wear a seatbelt, that's on you, man. If you fly through the windshield, that's on you. I'm not going to pay for your injuries. So I think ultimately this is about self-government, right? We don't need, and honestly, seatbelt laws are an excuse a lot of times for you to get pulled over, and then, I smell something in the car, and then they search the car, and then there we go, and you're at liberty, now you're in jail. So it is an easy excuse to be able to pull somebody over, a road pirate to do that. So I'm one who says, let's reduce that instance. But also with regards to kids, you're right, it's an important thing, but I also think this is a thing culturally that we can talk about. You'll be shamed if you don't have a car seat for your kid. 50 years ago, kids were just roaming around in the front seat, airbags smacking them in the face, whatever. And then culturally, we moved past that. We've developed child safety seats. There's an entire industry devoted to it. And trust me, when you become a new parent, you're inundated with all the other new parents of recommending this is the best seat for you, this is the best this is the best that. Those are the people who can help you determine what is the best safety feature for your kid, not necessarily a state-mandated function, because, of course, the state screws things up all the time. I would trust my neighbors who also have kids to help me inform me about what would be best for my child in terms of safety. And, again, good ideas don't require force, and we don't have to have the government make those decisions for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tremont.
Thanks very much. Of course, seatbelt laws are dopey, but that's not really what this is about. What this is about is recognizing that a government that has the authority, that takes to itself the authority, the government that we allow the authority to make rules for us about wearing a seatbelt or about wearing a helmet when you're riding a motorcycle, that's a government that's going to go not only an inch too far, but a mile too far. Now you've started on the road of allowing government to make decisions for you. That is going to turn into a government that's going to make a decision for you about whether or not you should be vaccinated. That's a government that's going to look into whether vaccines are a good idea. That's a government that's going to look into how those vaccines are distributed, how they're developed, and what information you're allowed to know about them. That's a government that's going to lie to you, because that's a government that's going to use it as an excuse to spread its own authority. That's a government that doesn't want to be face down, a government that doesn't want to be embarrassed, a government that doesn't want to be forthcoming, a government that's going to send money abroad to develop another vaccine at some point in the future, a government that's going to spend money abroad to develop another virus in the future. We need to fight these battles at the low level so that they don't turn into something egregious in the long run. So it's not really about seatbelts. It's really about something much bigger.
Thank you. Mr. Hornberger.
I take a different perspective than my honorable opponents here. You know, and I when I first discovered libertarianism, I went to the Foundation for Economic Education seminar in New York. And I asked that question. You know how when you discover libertarianism, you hit different issues that are like stumbling blocks. And I asked the seminar director, what about seatbelt laws? And he didn't hesitate. He says, on my highway and my street, you would not have to wear seatbelts. And the light bulb went off in my head, is that this is really a private property situation. That we need to raise people's vision in this country to the notion that we don't need government-owned highways and roads and streets, that all these should be privatized. And then the private owners decides how these are going to be run. They want seatbelts, fine. Somebody doesn't like it, they don't have to use that particular highway. But it's always the owner of the private property that sets the rules. So I decided long ago, I'm not going to get in the business of telling the state how to run its business. Public schools, I don't get embroiled in whether there should be a Pledge of Allegiance or uniforms or lockers this or whatever. I don't tell the state how to run its business. Instead, what I do is try to raise people's vision to what freedom is. Freedom is getting the government out of the school system, out of education, and getting government out of the street and highway system, and let private owners decide the use of these vehicles.
Thank you very much. Clap it up, people. It's okay. All right. Mr. Termott, how are you, sir?
Good.
Good. That's not your question. You were a cop for Broward County, and sorry, I'm losing my voice already. It's been a long weekend. You were a cop for Broward County during COVID, at which point it is my understanding that they had a 62-page document on COVID restrictions on what you needed to do to be a good cop. How many of those things were you derelict in?
Is that true, by the way?
I believe so.
I believe you, but I never saw such a thing, and I sure as hell wouldn't have read it.
So with the COVID restrictions, like how much of it did you push against? How much of it did you enforce? And how does that affect you?
Sure. Our officers pushed back against the whole kit and caboodle, just FYI. I was a cop on the road in Broward County for 11 and a half years. Being a police officer is about protecting your safety. It's about protecting your rights from others. And, as Dan implies quite correctly, a police officer's job is also to protect your civil liberties from the state itself, because one of the things you learn as a cop on the road, especially if you're a registered libertarian, by the way, is that you're the last defense of the Constitution. So you better take your job pretty seriously. It's really definitionally the difference between being in good police work and being in bad police work. We gave a lot of pushback. There were times when we were asked to distribute information, and we did that. I don't think that included the 62-page brochure. That sounds a little heavy for my car. But there were plenty of times when we would have to go out and inform people, and this happened all the time. You 12 people at the swimming pool, the governor wants you to know that you're not allowed to have more than 10 people gathered in one place at one time. And people would say, oh, crap, that means we got to pack up and go home? No, let me be more clear about this. The governor wants you to know that he doesn't want more than 10 people together in one place at one time. My job is now done. You see that ugly-ass car in the parking lot? I'm going to get back in it and drive to the next swimming pool, okay? What you do is on you. I'm sure that 62-page brochure had a lot of good stuff, and I'm sorry if I missed something useful, but I doubt it.
Thank you. Now, was there anything that you did anything that you enforced that you would regret having enforced now? Any mask mandates, anything like that?
No, we didn't enforce any mask mandate or vaccine mandates or anything like that. We had a few confrontations with our leadership that I did regret at the moment. I gave my boss a real hard time at the moment. In retrospect, I don't regret it, but at the time I felt pretty bad. We embarrassed our chief once when we made her come out and explain to people that they needed to shut down their party because we weren't going to do it. And eventually she got back in her car and went home too. So that worked out well. At the moment, I was a little embarrassed for her, but in retrospect, it's all good.
All right. Thank you. Oh, Rectenwald, go ahead. 30 seconds.
Listen, this is tough. Mike Tremont is one of the most decent persons I know. He's become a close friend on this campaign trail. I love the guy. But here's how the state works. It tries to enroll people into its structures. It enlists them to become state agents. And then they end up imposing state mandates and state desiderata. We can't do that. We can't be a people that goes around telling people that their liberties should be constrained in such ways. That isn't our function. We must never become state agents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rectenwald. Anybody else want to in? Chase?
Just to speak on that point, I would want to say there's probably a lot of veterans here in the audience today. They were state agents as well, and they were woken up to the fact about it. And I welcome veterans in the Libertarian Party, and I welcome Mike in the Libertarian Party as an ex-police officer.
Very good.
So I've had the pleasure of traveling to different states with all of these gentlemen. And one of the things that I was going to say is that each of these debates that we have, I take one little thing from each guy. They teach me about liberty every single week that we go on these events. And I want to say that Mike is a principled libertarian, and that the fact that he was a police officer does not bother me 1 inch at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Let me weigh in on this. You know, I mean, if we limit government to its legitimate functions, which I believe we should do, that is the role of the police is to arrest, and the role of the district attorney is to prosecute people who are committing murder, rape, stealing, burglary, the initiation of force against other people. So I think the role of a police officer is a very honorable one. I don't see if there's any question about it. The problem is that when they saddle police with things like the drug war or pornography laws, that's where the problem comes in, but not with the police officer.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. All right, moving on. A lot of you guys yesterday, when I asked you what the number one issue is, a lot of you mentioned immigration. I have to spend too much time on it because I'm sure you've answered a lot of these questions at every single debate. But I'm curious with the Texas border and all that's happening right now. If Texas, well, first of all, should Texas try to secede? And if they did, would you, for those of you that are more open borders, would you respect Texas's border right to defend their border at that point if they were their own country? And wherever you want to weigh in, we'll start with Mr. Hornberger. That's 90 seconds.
I think the whole secession thing is ridiculous. I mean, theoretically, yes, we all support the right of secession, or I assume we do. But that was settled in 1864. Any state starts to secede, we know what's going to happen. We're talking about federal invasions and another civil war. And I don't think anybody wants to go that route. Look, on immigration, we're talking about fundamental rights. The right to peacefully cross a border. No state has a right to interfere with that. When I crossed the border driving down here into North Carolina, I was not initiating force against anyone. I wasn't violating anybody's rights. As soon as the state tried to stop me with a checkpoint or an arrest or tell me to open my trunk, as the Border Patrol did with me when I was in high school once, they're violating my rights. So when Texas is over there, it's in no different position from the federal government. It has no legitimate authority to control the free movements of people across its borders from the north, from Oklahoma, from the west, from the east, or from the south. And as I've maintained for 30 years, and I said in my opening statement, the cause of this crisis, the only cause, is the socialism, is the control. It's like the drug war. How do you get rid of the drug war crisis? You legalize drugs. You get rid of the apparatus. The cartels disappear immediately. The only way to get rid of this crisis and all the police state that comes with it, and I've suffered under that police state, is to get rid of the cause of the crisis, and that's the socialist system of immigration controls. There is no other solution.
Thank you. Mr. Maat.
Thanks a lot. I have a little bit of a different take on this matter. However you feel about secession, and you may think it's not a great idea, personally I would not advise the good people of Texas to secede. But however you may feel about it, I don't think it's ridiculous. No matter how you have decided in your own mind whether it's a good idea for North Carolina to secede or Florida or Texas or anybody else, don't tell me it hasn't crossed your mind. As we opened up with this debate, and I mentioned, these are not small issues. These are your values, your principles, and your rights at stake. People take this seriously. And by the way, people should take this seriously. I believe that every state does have a right to secede. Now, I believe that there are better ideas out there. Personally, the flagship of my Gold New Deal is to give states the right to unilaterally nullify federal supremacy in state court, okay? It's a 10th Amendment related idea. Alternatively, we could reenact the 10th Amendment and say this time we mean it, but I'm not sure that would work. I do believe that, by the way, remember, do I still have 10 more seconds? Remember that Texas is one of only a couple of states that during the Civil War said that there was a second reason, it wasn't just about slavery, that they wanted to secede, and that was the federal government's inability to make good on its promise to protect the border. Texas has a long history of taking this very seriously. We do need a more pro-immigration and more pro-immigrant policy, but Texas has better options.
So to start with the beginning of the question, do I believe Texas has the right to secede? I believe the people of Texas has the right to secede, not the state of Texas, because as we know, states don't have rights. People have rights. And I would advise them against doing so, not just because I selfishly love the state of Texas and love traveling through it and love the people of Texas and would like them to stay here in the U.S., but because I think, ultimately secession is not like a guarantor of liberty. So Joe Biden's no longer your president. Texas secedes. Now Greg Abbott is your president. You have Democrats and Republicans in the State House. Aren't you so much more free today? That doesn't really necessarily, say that freedom is going to come to you just because you secede. So I think it's not the best strategy for freedom there. That being said, if they were to do that, if the people decided to do that, of course we would honor their borders. We would honor and respect their ability to do what they want to do at the border, just like we do with our federal government. That's why we're having this problem in the Texas border over who has jurisdiction, because there's multiple borders there. There's a national border, a state border, a county border, a town border. All of those exist there. They're all imaginary lines, but who has jurisprudence over that? The Supreme Court said in the 19th century several times that the federal government has sovereignty over the border with other nations, and that's where we kind of have to go with that. But that also means we have to end the abuses that we see from our federal government every single day in our immigration crisis. And this is why I want to tear down walls, not build walls, and less razor wire, and actually fix the process to where people can just come here and work. If they just want to come here and peacefully work, they should be able to cross right through the border, say who they are, come right in, go to work, and let the free market determine where the labor needs to go. And, of course, seasonal labor can go this way and that way across the border and fix a lot of the problems we have.
Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald.
Yeah, listen, the state of Texas has no right to secede. The individuals in Texas have a right to secede. And the fact of the matter is, the more people, the closer the government, the more local it is to people, the more power they have over it, and the less coercive it is. The central federal government is the most coercive agency of government that exists. So localization gives people more liberty. It gives them more liberty over their lives. So I believe that localization and decentralization are the key. In terms of immigration, we have a crisis. There's no question. And it's caused by the government. And it is based on several things. One, that we had a foreign interventionist policy towards Central America. Secondly, that we have had trade policies that block goods from traveling, and therefore people have nothing to do in their home states, home countries, and this is why they leave. And third, we're incentivizing it with social welfare. My fellow candidates talk about cutting social welfare, especially Hornberger, but I don't hear any mention of cutting the social welfare that incentivizes immigration artificially with payments doled out to immigrants. This is a grave mistake, and it's creating a humanitarian crisis. This is not a haven of liberty when you have to come to the United States and sleep on the streets in New York City. That is not my idea of liberty. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mapstead.
Thank you very much. How many people here want to secede from the IRS? How many people want to secede from the Federal Reserve? How many people want to secede from gun laws, from alcohol laws, from tobacco laws, from the ATF, from the DEA, from all these agencies that coerce our lives every single day? I want you to be able to secede from your government. That should be your right. And that should be every American's right. I don't want to be paying taxes so they can take my tax dollars and drop bombs on kids in faraway lands anymore. I want to secede from that. I don't have that option right now. What I can do is I can unrig the system and start getting us more toward freedom, as close as we can be. Because I don't want the state to be coercive against me anymore. I don't want the state to be coercive against you anymore. I'm sick and tired of it. And I want to send a middle finger to the duopoly this election cycle and tell them that we're sick of government telling us how to live our lives and telling us how we must behave and telling us how we must think and feel. I don't like that. I want to live my life to my true self. And I believe that I know how to live my life better than the government or any government agent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator. I believe Mike Rectenwald mentioned my name.
That is correct. Go ahead. 30 seconds.
Okay. This notion that a welfare state justifies a tyrannical violation of human rights is ridiculous. We need to adhere to our principles, even though it results in the payment of higher taxes. And that's really what he's suggesting. We need to focus on ending the welfare state, which he favors continuing. At the South Carolina debate, he called it an off-ramp to continue Social Security for the next 25 years, and now he wants to use that as the excuse to have an immigration police state along the border. But since this is a debate, let me issue a challenge to him.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. That's your 30 seconds. Rectenwald, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, listen, what I said is that in terms of, well, he mentioned that I said something about, what was it again?
The welfare state.
Oh, the off-ramps. It's Social Security. Okay, what happened with Social Security? People have been robbed, say, over 40 to 50 years, and now you're going to tell them, I'm sorry, that robbery is now a fait accompli. We've got your money, you're shit out of luck. Sorry about that. What I'm arguing is not some sort of slow, gradualist off-ramp. People should be paid that money immediately, counting for inflation and for interest. That's what it, if that then erodes the federal government and it crumbles, good.
Thank you very much. All right. Anybody else? Anybody got anything else?
Yeah, I got
it.
Yeah?
Mike, go ahead. 30 seconds.
I got mentioned. They said people. I'm a person. Look, the idea...
Touche.
The idea that we would take all this money from people through Social Security and then just tell you, go pound sand, that's not a libertarian policy. I find that wholly unethical. Regarding the border, we do need a more pro-immigration, more pro-immigrant border. And Michael is right. We need to end the humanitarian crisis there. That means getting people through vetted much more quickly so that we don't continue to create this incentive to come through illegally and then pick up that stupid check later on.
Thank you very much. Mr. Oliver, go ahead. And
It's just 90 seconds. I was going to say, you didn't get his 90 seconds.
Oh. Feel free.
I just have a debate challenge to everybody here, including Rectenwald. Will you publicly, right now, at the very minimum, I'm not asking you to defend open borders. I know you're not there yet. Will you publicly, right now, call for a dismantling of Donald Trump's wall and a restoration of all the property that was stolen from people through eminent domain to build that wall?
Listen, I think that there should be no eminent domain, and people's property that has been wrongfully confiscated should absolutely be returned. You'd mentioned privatization a while ago. I believe in total privatization. And that means the only walls or borders that would exist would be the borders around your property. And you would have the right to invite people into your property or not. So the question is not whether we have an open borders policy versus a closed border policy. The question is that whether we have a private property society in which we're actually inviting people in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver.
So to answer Jacob's challenge, absolutely. Tear it all down, 100%. Give the land back to the people who want to have it. Fuck Trump's wall. Now, to speak to the point Jacob's made in the past, he's accused me of being an incrementalist and that I'm a reformist. And I talk about Ellis Island-style immigration. But at our LP Alabama debate, you were talking about the greatest years of liberty in our country were the latter half of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century. That was the very time when we had Ellis Island immigration. I think we can actually do it even better in the 21st century, not have to make people wait for a long period of time to get any kind of background check. We can do that instantly. But that's about as free market as you can get, an Ellis Island-style system. And it worked great for us during the moment that you had mentioned is the greatest moment of liberty in our time, and I want to support that.
Chase mentioned me. My grandfather came in through Ellis Island.
Let's pass it to Mr. Hornberger for one more 30 seconds on this, and then Lars, I'll give you a shot after that.
The Ellis Island system was a system of tremendous abuse. It is a government control system. He wants inspection stations all along the border, all around the United States, that filters people, that comes with a police state. From the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo up to the Franklin Roosevelt administration, there was totally open borders between Texas and the rest of the people along the border and Mexico. Total open borders, not even an Ellis Island system. People were free to cross back and forth. My hometown of Laredo, where I grew up, had been part of Mexico, been part of the Spanish Empire. It was perfectly natural. Open borders. That government control system evolved into what we have today, and that's why I oppose that Ellis Island.
Mr. Mapstead,
thank you.
You're up.
The wall is Trump's emperor's clothes, and somebody's going to stand up and point out that you can dig a tunnel under a wall, or you can put a ladder over a wall, or you can walk around a wall because they can't build it over the mountains and they can't build it through the rivers. It's silly, and somebody really needs to point that out. And I'm completely against eminent domain. It's a foothold to socialism, and it allows the state to steal your property. And I do not believe that the state should ever have a right to take your property at all, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mapstead. All right. We are going to move on. At the beginning of this debate, you guys all said that you're not going to be president, which leaves us with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. This is where we're at, guys. Now, between those two, I want to know which one you think is less mentally fit to be president between the two of them. Good luck. Mr. Mapstead, we'll start with you.
Sure. They're both completely mentally unfit to be president of the United States. Look, I remember watching Ronald Reagan in his last years of presidency and thinking to myself, this guy isn't there. He's not running the show. And that's the same thing I see with Joe Biden right now. And I'm afraid that Trump gets in there again, and by the time 4 more years goes by, we have another third guy that doesn't have his brain working anymore, right? But so who is running the country right now? It's the bureaucrats, the bureaucratic state. And we're not going to get through this bureaucratic state by just getting the presidency changed. We have to end the bureaucratic state. And that's what the goal here is. And so these guys are both totally incompetent. They shouldn't either be president. And I'm tired of being forced the illusion of choice, that we are ending up having to pick these two lunatics again. And I joke that we're going to have Hunter Biden versus Jared Kushner in 2028.
Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald.
Yeah, I mean, they're both disqualified for different reasons. Biden is merely a skin suit who is basically wielding a pen at the behest of a Politburo, for lack of a better word. This is a committee that's running the country, and he's absolutely has no efficacy or agency, I don't think, whatsoever. I don't think he knows what's going on. On the other hand, Donald Trump is a narcissistic. Everything that he does has to do with a certain personal animus against, he says he wants to dismantle the deep state, but really this is only the agencies that he didn't like that have come after him. So it's about political grievance, not principled stand. So neither have principles at all. And speaking of Trump, I mean, he wants to loan money to Ukraine, so-called, to continue that war. He wants to keep funding the war in Israel. So he is no different. This choice is such a false dichotomy. It's a false choice. That's not a choice that is really being given. The Uniparty has the same foreign policy, and effectively it matters very little which one of them is chosen by default, unfortunately.
Thank you.
So people will say things like, Joe Biden, he doesn't have it anymore. He's not with it. Well, he never had it to begin with. Let's be frank. He was stupid when he ran for president in 2008 and tried to say we can just split Iraq into 3 different countries and that'll make peace. He was stupid in 1988 when he ran for president and plagiarized his own campaign. He's always been dumb. So this idea that he doesn't have it anymore, he never had it. And he's losing whatever he did have. And so we need to recognize that. The man mistook the president of Mexico for the president of Egypt. Oh, and later that night, Donald Trump confused the president of Turkey with the president of Hungary. He doesn't really have it either, and he never really had it either. Donald Trump is a career grifter. He is a BS agent with a 500-word vocabulary. Here, if I'm selling this phone and I'm Donald Trump, here we go. This phone is tremendous. This is the greatest phone. I'm hearing all the best things about this phone. Everyone's talking about this phone. This is the best phone that's ever existed. Let me just tell you about this phone. It's amazing. He has a 500-word vocabulary. He's not some brilliant genius. He is a business huckster who's gotten rich off of grifting off of every project that's ever made. Just ask the people who put up the crown molding in his buildings 25 years ago, and they'll tell you they got stiffed on the payments. He is a criminal. He is gross. And I don't support him, and I don't support idiot Joe Biden either, who thinks that he can tell the Iraqis how to run their government, or he can plagiarize his own campaign, or at this point he can barely mumble out a sentence that makes any kind of sense. The American people are waking up. This is why 63% are saying they are ready to vote for somebody who's not Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Let's put somebody who's half of each of their age on stage with them, and let's see what the real difference can look like. That could be the libertarian alternative, and that's what I'm trying to be.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oliver. Mr. Tremette.
All good stuff. It is a little weird that these two guys are more like my mother's age than more like my age. And I have a full head of gray hair, so I find that a little bit weird, to be honest. Look, the reason these guys should not be in power is not because they're mentally unfit, as mentally unfit as they are. It is true, and this has been alluded to, let me be explicit, it is true that everyone on this stage has got 40 IQ points on these guys. That's not a reason for making the change that we need to make. The truth of the matter is that both of these guys are authoritarians. They lead parties that are interested in nothing else but remaining in power, suppressing the other party's ability to come to power. Both of these guys, both of these parties routinely lie about democracy, right? They lie about the other side stealing democracy. I would never steal democracy. But they're both all about doing whatever it takes to keep the other side out of power, whether that's cheating, stealing, lying, using the CIA, using ballot boxes, using ballot access. They will absolutely do anything. That's where authoritarianism comes from, and that's what these two guys are all about.
I take a slightly different perspective. I don't believe that Biden or Trump is the problem. There's a great book that I wish every American would read called National Security and Double Government by Michael Glennon, who is not just a quack. He's a professor of law at Tufts University and former counsel to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. His thesis, to which I subscribe, is that the president's not running the show, and neither is Congress or the Supreme Court. It's the national security establishment. They're in charge. The Pentagon, the CIA, and the NSA, especially on foreign policy. And as I have emphasized all over my campaign website, jacobforliberty.com, as I've emphasized for decades, including a book I wrote called The Evil of the National Security State, that's the worst mistake we ever made in the history of this country, was converting the federal government to a national security state. We need to restore a limited government republic. This killing machine has killed millions of people. Martin Luther King was right. This is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. Invasions, occupations, state-sponsored assassinations, embargoes, sanctions. We need to get rid of this thing. The CIA, the most evil agency in the history of this country, the NSA, the Pentagon, and restore just a basic military force. And that's how we get government back in balance with an executive, president, Congress, legislative, and Supreme Court. Otherwise, we will continue living under omnipotent, total government, tyrannical government, regardless who is elected president, because they're the ones in charge.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. All right. Moving on, Mr. Rectenwald, I have a question for you, sir. You are the Mises Caucus endorsement.
Yes.
You are picking the torch up that Dave Smith cowardly dropped on the ground for all of us to watch. and I say that out of love. I made the videos for it. I'm curious. He was a comedian who was supposed to be the bearer of the Ron Paul torch, and he had connections with Joe Rogan, comedian charisma, all that. Mm-hmm. You're a writer. I understand a very good one from people who tell me that can read. I cannot. With that, what do you think that you have the charisma or the, I guess, testicular fortitude, the connections, what have you, to lob the bomb that Dave Smith promised to lob after the takeover?
Yes, let's listen. I know the disappointment that came with the Dave Smith decision not to run, and largely that was a family matter, and I respect that entirely. Listen, Ron Paul was not Mr. Charisma. Ron Paul was just a truth teller. He just told the truth, and that rallied people. It wasn't necessary for Ron Paul to be some polished, utterly, charismatic figure. That's not what drew people to the movement. It was the message that he gave. And the same goes for the message now. And in fact, I think I'll be more radical than Ron Paul. And I think that I have the passion, and I've displayed it on many occasions. They started this narrative about me early on, like, well, he's like Sleepy Joe or some sort of, no charisma. This was just purely Trumpian tactics meant to sort of give people the impression that that was true based on what? And I didn't see the charisma that was being put in contrast with it either. So I don't think charisma is really a problem. And I think the real issue is not so much the personal magnetism of the person, but the facts and the truth that they're telling about what's happening. And that's what's necessary, and I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Oliver, 30 seconds.
Just to mention you're the Mises Caucus candidate, my question is what was the vote when that was determined? Like when the caucus met, like how many people were supporting you? Because I know everyone on this stage, all of us candidates, have some measure of Mises Caucus support. I've had members of the Mises Caucus say they're supporting me. And so I'm just wondering, like, what was the endorsement process? Like, what was the vote total? How did that happen?
Are you asking me?
I take it that's addressed to me. I don't think that it was a vote. It was a board decision, and they had a vote on the board for that, and their endorsement was thorough. It was a unanimous decision. So, look, the Mises Caucus is not trying to foist somebody down anyone's throat. They voted on the candidate they thought was best to represent the mission of decentralization, localism, wresting power from the federal government and vesting it in the people. And that's why they chose me. I had been writing about these issues for some time, speaking about them in numerous places. I've reached audiences far in excess of what people here on this stage have reached. I've been on Tucker Carlson 3 times. I've been on Timcast twice. I've been on major platforms all over the country. Yes.
All right. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah.
Mr. Hornberger, go ahead.
Yeah. 3 years ago, when I sought this party's nomination, I secured the endorsement of the Mises Caucus. And it was a big honor because they had a vetting process where they interviewed all the candidates. And they said, what books have you read by Ludwig von Mises? And I've read practically all of them. And what impact did Mises have on your life? And Mises had an enormous impact. So when they endorsed me, it was a tremendous honor and a tremendous benefit. And this time around, I wanted to vie for that endorsement again. I thought they'd have this same vetting process. And they didn't. From all accounts, it looked like Michael Heiss just made the decision. And as much respect as I have for Rectenwald and everybody else on this stage, I have the utmost respect for everybody here. I think the Mises Caucus would have been better served to have that vetting process once again to determine the nominee.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. Mr. Maat, go ahead. 30 seconds.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And I appreciated what Jacob just said. We all have a lot of respect for Michael, and I personally have a tremendous amount of respect for everybody on this stage. I think it is also true that elements of the Mises Caucus, members of the Mises Caucus, support each one of us. But I might as well just say this because it is the truth. If that vote were to take place with a silent vote, with a vote that was not revealed, and it were to take, by the way, I believe that there was not actually a vote taken, but if there were a vote taken by secret ballot today, I would win the majority of the board of the Mises Caucus. And that's not something that other people are going to tell you.
Thank you, Mr. Maat. Rectenwald, go ahead.
Well, that's interesting because that's not true. The Mises Caucus sent out a poll asking them which candidate would they support to all of the members of the Mises Caucus. It came from the board. By the way, the board did vote on me. And the result was I got 80% of the Mises Caucus list of support, with 10% going to Mike and another something to someone who's not here right now. And I'm not sure where they are. But the point being
He's
that
having kids.
There was a process, and there was a vote taken, and this was not like something rammed down people's throats. And in any case, they thought I was the best candidate, and I think I've proven that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to weigh in on that who hasn't already? If not, we will move on to something more fun. Everybody in the room, raise your hand if you believe at least one conspiracy theory or what the mainstream would deem. Okay, couple. 1, 2, 3. Epstein didn't kill himself. Raise your hand. Okay, we're all in. Let's do something fun here. We're going to do a little bit of a speed round. This is the conspiracy speed round. Just, you can answer it completely honestly. There's no right or wrong answer, but this is just a bit of a litmus test, I suppose, so people can see. This will just be a matter of raising your hand if you agree with the statement that I state. So, does everybody understand the rules? It's pretty simple. You raise your hand if you agree. Raise your hand if you agree that man has never walked on the moon. None. Okay, we'll get there. 9/11 was an inside job, or at least not what they told us. Okay? COVID was man-made. Okay.
The virus was created for the vaccine, by the way.
Yeah. Actually, let's pause. Let's pause from the conspiracy speed round. Jacob, I have a question for you. Following the Georgia debate that you took part in, you publicly released a 34-minute video accusing moderator Clint Russell of being an extreme right-winger and conducting McCarthyist-style interrogation. I watched the debate and did not think that happened. Do you feel, I'm curious, do you feel as though I've been in any way unfair, unreasonable? Will you make a video about me on the way home? And if so, what will you call me? Go ahead. 90 seconds.
I don't think you've been unfair, and I think you gave me an arduous interview yesterday and very fair. Look, whether people take a vaccine or not, or whether people use a mask or not, has nothing to do with libertarianism. And to accuse 270 million people who took vaccines of being dumb dupes of the state is about the worst political move you could ever do. I mean, we're 0% in the polls, and we're now telling 270 million people that they were dumb to take the vaccine. That is not good politics, and it's not good libertarianism. Libertarianism is the right to choose. Okay, you make your choice on whether to take a vaccine or not, whether to use a mask or not, to whether to stand 10 feet behind or not. And then businesses have a right to set their own conditions. And people have a right to set their conditions in their homes. But if we as a party start condemning people for the private choices they make, you can guarantee we're going to stay at that 0%. Our job as libertarians is to call for the free society. And that is, you have a right to make these decisions on your own. And we don't want to be getting in the business of alienating 270 million voters. I guarantee you, none of which are going to vote for this party if they think that we're calling them dumb dupes of the state for having taken the vaccine.
Now, a little bit of pushback on that. So you said that he was McCarthyist and he was an extreme right-winger. Can you justify any of those statements? Because I watched it and it seemed like he gave you the option to answer or not answer whether or not you were vaccinated, and you took offense to that.
Oh, no. He never got to me. He got to Mike Termott, and Mike Termott shut him down. Because what he was doing was...
But Toad actually asked that question.
Now, hang on a second. Let me answer your question. Okay? He was going to each candidate on this stage and asking them, did you take the vaccine? It was an inquisition. And it was
But
this.
that didn't happen.
Hang on a second. Let me finish. It was when he got to Mike Tremont, and Mike Tremont engaged in an act of sheer heroism. I will always admire this man for what he did, because he did what Joe Welch did to Joe McCarthy. He looked back at Clint Russell and said, it's none of your business whether I took the vaccine. And it wasn't any of his business.
But that's not how it happened.
It is exactly
we have it on
how it
video.
happened.
That's fine. The internet will decide. So with that, do you stand by everything you said about Clinton in that? You think he's an extreme right winger?
Absolutely. This is a guy that wants to send. You want me to answer?
Yeah.
This is a guy that wants to punish people for abusing power that he believes investing in them. Remember, in that debate, I said the only real solution to this healthcare problem is to get government out of healthcare. Okay? He doesn't want to do that. He wants to take people and punish them for advising to take the vaccine without a trial. Just punish them, round them up, even though they've committed no criminal offense on the books. Your friend Toad over there wants to send him to Guantanamo Bay.
We're not friends.
Oh, excuse me, then you're whatever. This guy wanted to send all these doctors and officials that advised taking the vaccine to Guantanamo Bay. This is a torture center that the national security establishment does, and he got no pushback whatsoever from Clint Russell, because the right-wing element in this party supports the national security state. They support Guantanamo Bay. And when Clint did not push back and said, you believe in Guantanamo Bay? I was stunned, absolutely stunned, because the libertarian position opposes a torture and prison center at Guantanamo Bay, along with the whole national security establishment.
Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald, 30 seconds.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that people didn't have absolutely free choice about taking a vaccine. They were coerced in many various ways. Government employees were coerced. The military was coerced. Corporations coerced their employees as well, especially those of government contracts. So this was not simply a matter of medical freedom, and it was abrogated from the start. And speaking of conspiracies, there's a very good indication that, in fact, much of the planning that went into the COVID response was made well before COVID even became a reality. Let that sink in. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? 30 seconds? All right, then we will move back to the conspiracy speed round, where you raise your hand when you agree with the statement and leave it down if you do not. JFK was killed by more than one person. Okay. All right.
By the way, I got to plug Jacob. I had a really fascinating interview with this guy a week or two ago, and I had already been on the same page with you regarding some of the JFK
Isn't that how
stuff.
speed round works?
Yeah.
10 seconds.
But
get it all out of your system. Go ahead.
But then I found that he was really an expert on this and has published a couple books on this and has deep knowledge on this, and he's absolutely damned right, and it's a condemnation of the CIA.
The 2020 election was stolen. Raise your hand. What was that? The 2020 election was stolen. Raise your hand.
It was rigged. What do you mean by stolen? Yeah, rigged.
It was not what they told us.
Yeah. It was rigged.
Okay. All right. Russiagate was a hoax. One. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Separating the men from the boys. That's a baby. On an island. What?
That's a maybe. I don't know, but of course the reason why we don't know is because security cameras were turned off and we don't have...
Speed round. John McAfee didn't kill himself. Raise your hand. Who? John McAfee. Ray Epps is a Fed. Ray Epps? No. Come on. Nicholas Sarwarker's a Fed. A little harder on that one.
No, he's not. That's very funny, but he's not.
Thank you.
It's a very interesting question.
All right. That's.
I know Nick Sarwarker. We disagree on a lot of stuff. He's not a Fed.
It's because you. Never mind.
Does the CIA have an infiltration of the LP?
Does it?
You asked the question.
It's something the Fed would recommend I ask. Let's all sing together. Sweet Caroline. Thank you. Let's bring it back around. Good job, white folk. Now, When I first discovered the Libertarian Party leading up to the 2016 election, there was one question, in addition to seatbelt laws, that stuck out to me, and I want to ask it here because I think it's an important one, and I think it's something that separates us from the other parties, and that was, if not you, on this stage, who would you vote for if you were not a candidate? Go ahead, 30 seconds, Lars.
Spike Cohen.
On this stage.
Spike Cohen.
Spike.
Listen, that's I appreciate the question, and look, if I weren't nominated, I'll vote for any of these guys over anybody in the regime. Period.
Thank you, Chase.
Yeah, so the first person you want to vet for a running mate is the other people who are running for president. So I'm currently looking into all of them. Haven't made a determination of who I think is the best, but there's strengths to speak to each and every one of them. And so again, I would share with Michael Rectenwald's point that we're going to vote for the Libertarian in November. We just don't know which one of it is, and I'm happy to vote for any of them. I don't know if I have necessarily a preference yet because I got to dig more and deep into your backgrounds and see all the dirty things that you guys have done before I can determine who's the best one. That's exactly right. I got to do some FOIA requests and some other things before I know. So until then, I'm just going to stay open.
I mean, none of you said Ray Epps was a Fed, so I don't trust any of you at this point. But Mike Tremont, go ahead.
Yeah, I would vote for Ray Epps. I could vote for any of these guys, and that's the truth of the matter. I love the idea of voting for Jacob here because he is such a pain in the neck to the rest of us on this dais. To his credit, right, he's the one that is always claiming that we're reformists, which, of course, I think is complete and utter crap. None of us are reformists. But I love that he keeps pounding us about this issue to make sure that we're as principled as completely possible. And I just love the idea that if I can't be out there being a pain in the ass for Republicans and Democrats, that he could be a pain in the ass in a way that he's been to us, to them.
Thank you. Mr. Hornberger.
Well, 3 years ago, I lost this nomination fair and square. And I delivered a wholehearted endorsement of Joe Jorgensen. And I would do the same in this race, that if I lose it again, and I hope I don't, I will endorse whoever is the nominee of this party, unless it's somebody like Robert Kennedy Jr. or Ron DeSantis or any of that ilk.
All right. Thank you all very much. Now, a couple more questions here. One in particular that I think is interesting because it could go multiple ways. Just so, as libertarians, we're all about the free markets and boycotting things that you disagree with. There's the culture war that's currently happening, and I know we all stand on different places within that spectrum. I'm curious, with the Bud Light boycott that just happened, it seemed like a successful boycott. Do you think that it was a net positive or a net negative in the culture war, the country, the society at large? We'll start at this end this time. Jacob, 90 seconds.
Well, I think it demonstrates the power of a free society that, businesses make decisions, and then consumers have a right to boycott them. And this is the way a free society works. You don't need government to nudge people in the proper behavior. Regardless of what the choices are, a free market does that. So if a business decides to take a certain angle, consumers say, we're not going to buy your product. And that nudges the business into maybe altering its behavior, maybe not. But that's the way a free society works. And I think that's the type of thing we need to elevate to people and say, hey, this is what we're striving for as libertarians, where people make their own choices, but if people don't like those choices, they can exercise private decision-making to boycott or ostracize those decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Tremont?
Yeah, that's well said. Look, failure is an important part of free markets, right? The reason the free markets work so well in capital allocation and the creation of businesses is because a lot of businesses fail. That's part and parcel of how the system is supposed to work. That's the beauty and the efficiency of it. So in that sense, we needed to see some marketing attempts that didn't work so well. We needed to see some marketing failures. And as far as the culture war goes, yeah, it's terrific that someone, tried some messaging and got some pushback. But it's also important, your question implied, you said net positive, as though there was some loss. There was no loss. The fact that Budweiser lost a lot of capitalization, money didn't just evaporate. went to the other companies. The other companies took their market share. You know, it's not like there was value destroyed in some net loss sense. So it's all good. Let people argue it out.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver.
So yeah, I would join your point in that there's not really a net positive or net negative to free market activity. I think it's just it's a function of market activity. Now, the Bud Light boycott, you know, I don't drink Bud Light anyways. I think it tastes like piss, so I don't drink it. But you know, the truth is people can decide what beer they want to drink, but whether it's based on taste or branding, the way the bottle looks, who's holding the bottle in the commercial, or they can not drink it based on all those factors. That's freedom, baby. And that's what we want to have in this country is free market economics. Now, do I think it's kind of ridiculous that Ron DeSantis was sending out fundraising emails like, show them Bud Light people, we mean business? Well, that's government trying to like glom on to these issues and trying to like make hay out of it. I think that's kind of tacky personally. But no, I think Bud Light's going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to make money or lose money depending on the choices that they make, and their competitors will then make money or lose money based on the choices they make. And maybe we drink more beer next year, maybe we drink less beer next year, culture's changing. Who cares, honestly? Like, I'm not going to try to get in the business of Bud Light. I'm busy running for president so that I can dismantle the state. As far as boycotts and stuff like that, I participate in them when I agree with them. I don't participate in them and I don't agree with them. So, for instance, I eat Chick-fil-A a whole lot. A lot of gay guys don't, but I do because the food's good. And I really don't care about their politics. I care about if the chicken tastes good.
Yeah. Thank you. They're closed on Sundays, too, which is stupid. It's ridiculous. Rectenwald, go ahead.
Yeah, so you've invoked a couple issues here. One of them is the free market and boycotting, and certainly people can put their money where they will, and that's the market at play. But there's more going on here. The government, the federal government and state governments have put their fingers on the scale in these culture wars in funding certain types of behavior. They're funding Planned Parenthood, which does which is one of the biggest servicers for transgender reassignment and so forth. So listen, the state has no business intervening in these issues and putting its finger on the scale and trying to shape the populace and create the social body that they want. They have a very vested interest in doing that, and that's why we must fight their interest at all costs. And that means totally dismantling it. I'm the only anarcho-capitalist here on this stage. I believe in full private property society. And that means completely self-governed population, a completely self-governed population. That's got to be our North Star. Anything short of that ideal, and we're selling ourselves short. We're not getting the full message of maximum liberty out to the people, and that's what we need to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Mapstead.
Thank you. During the Super Bowl, Joe Biden was talking about shrinkflation and how he was going to regulate companies for putting less stuff in their packaging, that it was unfair to Americans. Look, we don't need government to regulate that kind of stuff. People can choose with their own brain what they want to buy and what they don't want to buy. People are not victims, right? You get to choose with the power of the purse what you want to do, and so I am totally for people boycotting whatever they want to boycott. That is the free market. I'm against the government telling me what fork I can use, what straw I can use, whether I can buy this product or not, or they're going to force the corporations to behave a certain way. It's totally ridiculous. I'm for the free market 100% because I believe that is the best way to achieve economic freedom for the American people, and so I completely support the free markets. And the government being in here is just completely ridiculous. I don't need them being the nanny state on me in every second of every day. Thank you.
Did anyone else find it a little ironic that Joe Biden would complain about other people not having enough stuff in their package? I think that's really a weird comment there.
Thank you. So, one more speed round, and then we're going to let you guys breathe and go about your days. Last speed round question is this, and this will really separate the men from the boys. Which one of you, raise your hand if you are going to smoke with me a joint in the parking lot after this.
I consume cannabis.
Nice.
I want to speak
2.
I'm a 37 years sober, so I won't be smoking any joints with you.
Yep. It was supposed to be a hand raise, but I guess we can argue about it. That's fine. Fight over me.
I believe in total freedom over drug use, and I don't think the party does any good by holding such a policy while at the same time shaming people that use drugs. And so I think we need to be completely about people's liberty in all those respects. I happen to be a member of AA.
Speed round.
You smoke weed.
30 seconds.
I got hit by a car in 2019 and ruptured 3 vertebrae in my neck and spine, so I have actually found great value in cannabis, not only for recreational use, but also provides me pain relief in a way that opiates would not be able to do without crippling addiction coming with that. And so I think we need to destigmatize cannabis. Having a joint should be no more controversial than having a glass of red wine. We need to destigmatize cannabis, and as a candidate for president, I'm happy to do that and not run away from it.
That's absolutely the case. Well said. And by the way, I need the record to show I was not driving that car. There's a lot of rumors going around that are completely untrue. Look, if you are not a libertarian, if you are not a professional economist, before you became a police officer, being a cop will turn you into both a libertarian and an economist. You see the result of bad, crappy public policy at the local level every single day. The war on drugs is killing people. Not only does it create a black market that makes the drugs so powerfully unregulated in a market sense, but it also creates this oppressive criminal justice system.
Mr. Hornberger.
People have a right to ingest whatever they want to ingest, no matter how harmful, destructive, or whatever. And therefore, I favor the legalization of all drugs, not just marijuana, fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and leave people free to make these decisions. And don't make a judgment on people whether they're taking drugs or not taking drugs, or by the same token, whether they're taking vaccines or not taking vaccines. Just leave people alone to manage their own lives the way they want.
Thank you. All right. We good on all that? Everybody good? Okay. We're going to give you a 2-minute closer. In that closer, you can give any final statements, plug whatever you need, and I would, if you would be so kind as to include in there somewhere what your favorite part of this debate was, I'll give you bonus points. Mr. Mapstead, take it away. 2 minutes.
All right, I'm gonna stand up here for this. Thank you. Like I've said before, we have a messaging problem in the Libertarian Party. And I believe that I am the candidate that can get our message to the most people. And I believe that I can garner the most votes of any candidate on the stage because I can get our message to the most people. You have 50 people running for office in North Carolina. That is amazing. That is better than any state that I've been to so far. I'm going to be campaigning with you on the ground in North Carolina after I win the nomination because I think that's important. Winning the electoral vote in Maine or Nebraska is going to give you great cover and a great opportunity to talk about winning as a libertarian. And it's going to get media attention for the Libertarian Party like nothing has ever been before. We have to do something different because if we don't, on election night, we're going to get 1%, 2%, or 3%, and we're going to be a footnote again for another time. We have to think outside the box. We have to do something different. I have done many startups, and running a political presidential campaign is just like running a startup. I've built a professional team of people. I've put $500,000 of my own money into this campaign so far, and I'm going to continue to put money into the campaign. The thing is $500,000 is nothing. We need $15 or $20 million to get our message out, and in order to do that, we have to achieve national attention on the national stage, on the national media stage. And I'm doing that currently by being in 9 national polls. None of the other candidates are in multiple polls like I am, Wall Street Journal, Fox News, on and on. So, and this was all part of my marketing ability. The reason that I'm in these polls is not by chance. It's because I guerrilla marketed my way into these people's brains and into their psyche. And so they are talking about me across the board. Again, like I said, we have a messaging problem. I want you to become a delegate for me and get our message out there. Go to lars24.com, become a delegate, donate, and volunteer for my campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mapstead. Pushback there. What was your favorite part of the debate?
I think it was literally that I got one piece of information from each guy to to let me spread the message a little bit better. Everyone has a little bit different way of talking, and I think that you can glean little pieces from each guy of how to spread our message to the American people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald, 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for being here. Here we are on a Sunday morning fighting for liberty. That is incredible. So give yourselves a round of applause. And that's what we need. We need to actually have people spreading liberty locally and spreading it across their networks. It isn't enough to wait until an election comes around and then ask for people to vote Libertarian. We must create Libertarians much further upstream than the electoral process. So this is not merely a campaign. This must be a movement. This must be a movement for liberty. And we must have the principled position all the way through. So we need to promote decentralization and localization. We need to promote more power to the people locally. We need to create libertarians upstream in culture, in advance of the electoral process. This has got to be more than a campaign. It has to be a movement. We must make this an evangelical movement to spread liberty. And the only way we're going to have real libertarianism is by making libertarians, okay? Now, Harry Brown ran in 1996 and 2000. He only got 1% of the vote. But after that run, the Libertarian Party grew members. It wasn't and these were not just temporary members. It actually this was retained. There was retention of this membership and an increase in volume and donations. And he did not get the electoral success that, say, Gary Johnson got. Nevertheless, the party gained from it, and liberty was increased by virtue of it. That's what we need to do. We need to make more libertarians, do it more further upstream, continue the movement well beyond the electoral campaign, and we must spread liberty directly to people in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rectenwald. But what was your favorite part of the debate?
I liked it when I was called a reformer. Because it's hilarious that I'm definitely the most radical libertarian on this stage. Now, what I mean by that is I totally want to get rid of the state.
So you like when people call you a reformer?
Yeah, because it's funny.
Okay, gotcha. Mr. Oliver, 2 minutes.
Quick programming note. If I stand up, will you still be able to see us on camera?
It's
Because I
better,
did that
actually.
at one debate and
It's
then
better.
just shot our navel the entire
She just requested that I have you stand up, so please do.
So I want to say thank you to North Carolina Libertarians for coming out and doing the business of this party. It's what I say at every state convention. I say to everyone, thank you for coming out and doing the business of our party. It is required. It is needed for this party to grow and function. I want to represent our party as our candidate for president because I know I can sell the idea of liberty to millions of frustrated Americans out there who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. I know there are so many people out there, whether it's immigration, justice reform, the warfare state, their taxes being too high, their property being abused, their liberty being thrown away. Whatever their one issue is, we need to bring them into the tent. We need to say, welcome home to liberty. You don't think immigrants are treated right? You think they're abused? Welcome home to liberty. You're tired of seeing wars get fought all over the country or all over the world on our name, putting bombs, killing kids all over the world? Welcome to liberty. You're sick and tired of seeing police use and abuse the populations they're supposed to be serving? Welcome home to liberty. That's the kind of nature we need to have in a presidential campaign. That's the kind of energy we need to have, is to bring people into this movement, to grow this movement, and to build a foundation for liberty that can flourish for years to come. Generation Z is going to be the largest pool of voters in 15 years, and it's time for us to give them a message that resonates, that can have it stick to them and get them to vote outside of the two-party system, not just in this election, but in every future election. They'll look at the ballot and they'll say, what else is there other than the failed two parties? That's the kind of energy, that's the kind of message that we need to be putting out there to the voters. They are, in one way or another, libertarian, and we need to connect that one thing with the rest of our philosophy to make them a full-throated libertarian, because that's how it was for me. I got in this party because I was an anti-war Democrat, and it was because somebody sold the idea that being anti-war is being pro-liberty. I want to do that for millions of frustrated Americans, and I need your help to do it. Go to votechaseoliver.com, join our team, join the movement, and in November, we are going to make waves, and we're going to stick a thumb right into the eye of the two-party system, because that's what they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Follow-up question.
My favorite part of the debate, I'm going to say both. It's the production value because you're always on top of it with audio and video, and you've been a very good moderator. You've asked tough questions, but you've been pretty fair about it, and I think that's a good thing to be commended. So let's give our moderator a round of applause.
Thanks. Aw. Thank you. Mr. Tremont, 2 minutes.
Thanks very much. Look, my favorite part of the debate was giving us all a chance to get our message out. The truth of the matter is that we do have a big opportunity in 2024, and we need to get some things right. Lars is right. We need to raise a great deal of money. It is 2 orders of magnitude greater than the amount of money that has been spent up until now. We need to raise not just 3, 5, and 7 million, but 10, 15, and 20 million dollars. My campaign is set up to do exactly that. To achieve success, we need to do 2 things, importantly, 2 things that we have not done in the past in this party. One is to run a very principles-forward campaign. You can read about my platform at goldnewdeal.org. The other thing that we need to do is to run a very credible campaign. I am uniquely positioned as the candidate with a great deal of public policy and a great deal of public service experience. I appreciate the fact that inside of our party, public policy and public service experience don't carry a great deal of water. Sometimes they don't carry a great deal of water with me personally. But the truth of the matter is, outside of this party, there is a threshold of credibility that Americans expect. Big donors, voters, and big media expect a certain threshold of credibility to be achieved for them to be paying any attention. And remember, this is not a philosophy seminar, this is a competition. Don't take us out of the game. You have to be in there competing in a very credible way to actually disrupt the duopoly. Check out goldnewdeal.org, yes. Check out MikeTremont.com, yes. But I'd like to ask you to check out a third website that we've been launching the past couple of months, libertarianintelligence.org. We have a new AI bot out there. We call it Lisa. It's a lot of fun. It's in beta. Play with it and let me know what you think of it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Tremont. And lastly, Mr. Hornberger, 2 minutes.
I think now's the time for some serious soul searching in this party. You know, what are you here for? What do you want out of this? I want to be free before I pass from this life. And you're not going to achieve freedom with 1% of the vote. Nobody cares about 1% of the vote. Or the latest poll, 0%. I'm saying let's give Americans something they are not expecting this time around. A campaign that is based totally 100% on genuine, pure founding principles of this party, including open borders. Yes, when somebody does not call for the dismantling of that Berlin Wall and favors the sealing of the border and the militarization of the border and the highway checkpoints and the warrantless searches and seizures, that is not freedom. And let me tell you also, it's not a vote getter. Because we've been told time and time again that we've got to change directions in this party in favor of immigration controls to get votes. 0 votes. 0. Because every single proponent of immigration controls in this country is going to vote for Donald Trump or going to vote for Bobby Kennedy. They are not going to waste their vote on a Libertarian Party presidential candidate that favors that position. My position can garner the vote of every single person that is sick and tired of what's been going on in this country down there on the border. And there's a lot of those people. They can't get this vote because of their position favoring this system. I can get that vote. Secondly, all of those, if you weren't with us in Wilmington 3 years ago, I would encourage you to talk to the people that were there with us in Wilmington. When we went back into the poorest black neighborhoods of this state and talked about libertarianism, we have never gotten a more positive, enthusiastic response to this message of pure liberty that we got in those neighborhoods. And I guarantee you, you're not going to get that response from the upper middle class Republican neighborhoods of Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Raleigh-Durham, or anywhere else. I say let's lead America and let's lead the world to the highest reaches of freedom that mankind has ever seen, and let's do it as libertarians with our genuine principles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. And Mr. Hornberger, one follow-up question. What's your favorite part of the debate?
Well, I have to say, it's when my friend Mike Tremont commended me on my work on the JFK assassination, because I'm very proud of that work, and it's a big honor to have him say those nice things. So thank you, Mike.
You bet.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Give him one more round of applause. We will not be doing Q&A, but please find them, ask them all the questions if you want to, and give them all the credit. Thank you guys so much for being here and for representing these people. Y'all have a great one. And thank you to Ryan Brown for being here, being my bellman. Thank you guys.
Yes, the bell was my favorite part of the debate. Thank you all for showing up at this convention. We'll be sending out some emails afterwards asking for feedback and volunteers for next year and all that fun stuff. But thank you all for coming, and have a great time talking to these guys.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe on your way out and help us change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time. And if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, go join the Downers Club at patreon.com/thesystemsdown for bonus episodes of the show every single week. Until next time, please continue to question everything, stay uncomfortable, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.